Claude Code is changing the way on how we build voice AI agents. Previously, we had to manually configure everything from writing the prompts, tweaking the voice AI agent settings, manually dragging and dropping every single N8N node, testing, debugging, all of this just to get one simple agent working. But now with Claude Code, we can build powerful voice AI agents faster, smarter, and with way less friction. And that's exactly what this full course is about. I'm going to be walking you through step by step on how to use Claude Code to virtually build any voice agent you want instantly. I'm going to be showing you everything from setting up Claude Code properly for voice agents to 4 real-world builds so you can see how we can go from idea to deployment instantly with Claude Code. By the end of this video, you have everything you need to go from complete beginner to a confident Claude Code voice AI agent builder. If you don't already know me, my name is Ashton. I've been helping business owners implement voice AI systems to save time, cut costs, and drive growth. And if you do enjoy this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Without further ado, let's jump straight in. Okay, and welcome to Claude Code for Voice AI Agents, the full course. Now, in this 3+ hour masterclass, I'm going to be taking you from complete beginner, knowing absolutely nothing about Claude Code, to a seasoned professional able to use Claude Code to instantly build any type of voice agent. That's the main goal of this course. So again, if you watch the entire video, you will have everything you'll need to know to successfully build any voice agent you want. Okay, so now let's get into what we're actually going to cover now. I'm going to split this up into 8 different sections, and everything is going to be bookmarked below. So make sure to go ahead and save this video and look at the bookmarks, and you can see what section you're going to be up to. Now, in 1.0, I'm just going to be explaining a little bit about Claude Code, what it is, what it does for voice agents, how it works, what the old way was for voice agents building it, and what the brand new way is. This section is very important for understanding how Claude Code is building these new voice agents, because it's very important that you understand that. 2.1 is going to be installing our IDEs, N8N MCPs, all of our servers, skills, everything for Claude to give it context to go ahead and build N8N workflows automatically. That's right. You don't have to design any N8N workflows anymore. And that's going to work in combination with our next part, which is going to be 2.2, which is installing our retail API documentation context. This is going to give context to Claude so it can actually go ahead and create all of these voice agents instantly using their API documentation. So those two systems are going to be working in combination, and that's actually how we're going to be building these voice agents. So we've got our N8N workflows, and then we've got our retail documentation combined with Claude Code and our IDE server gives us instant voice agents, okay? And then from there, I'm going to be taking you through 4 builds, all practical builds using Claude Code so you can see and get your feet around the new Claude Code. We've got build 1, which is just a simple agent running you through a 3-step process, simple process for creating any voice agent. Build 2 is going to be covering an outbound AI agent. So we're going to be using N8N, we're going to be using retail, we're going to be designing workflows to create an outbound agent. So those are your speed to lead agents, your agents that are calling off website forms, everything, okay? And then build 3 is going to be a lead reactivation agent. So we can give Claude a large list of leads. It's able to build workflows. It's able to create a bunch of outbound calls through Retail's API. And then finally, build 4 is going to be an advanced inbound agent. So we're going to be giving Claude real API documentation for real systems. It's going to be a multi-scheduling agent, so booking, canceling, rescheduling appointments. We've got our post-call webhooks in there. We've got transferring, knowledge base, everything. I'll be showing you how to do that with Claude Code, again, all automatically, and you'll see the power of it and how it can drastically cut down development. And then from there, we're going to be moving on to testing. So I'm going to be going through my testing protocol and where I think Claude Code will be applicable in that, and I'll show you how to run a few tests and how to test your voice agents with Claude Code. And then finally, we'll be ending off with deployment. So again, how to use Claude Code for phone numbers, SIP trunks, and all that good stuff. Again, everything will be bookmarked below. Without further ado, let's jump into section 1.0. Okay, so what actually is Claude Code? So Claude Code is essentially an agentic coding interface, right? So Claude Code is an AI tool that runs in our terminal. We're going to be using an IDE in this course. I'll show you how to set that up a little bit later to transform how you build voice agents. So it essentially gives us the ability to instantly create these voice agents. So I'm going to be diving deep into actually how it's working in the back end and how we create, production grade agents. But that's essentially all Claude Code is, okay? So we can see there's three main components to Claude Code that I've summed up, right? We've got code base aware. So Claude Code is an extremely powerful coding model that allows us to read, edit, and understand our project structure across different coding frameworks. I've got examples such as Python, Node.js, JSON, MD, all these different coding frameworks. Claude Code is extremely powerful in all these different coding languages, and it can create code, understand it, read it, write it inside your laptop and terminal, right? And I'll explain how all this works and all the different tools we're going to use. But that's essentially what Claude Code is, right? And number two, it is autonomous. So it can execute commands, run APIs, manage files, handle complex logic independently. It can fix mistakes, and it can essentially act on its own, right? So beforehand, we had to go ahead and design these workflows, build everything in retail. Claude Code gives us the ability to do that, right? And as long as it can use the code and use the APIs within the systems, it can automatically create everything. And I'll run through a little bit later how that works. Number three is the bridge, right? So it connects natural language prompts to actual deployable code that can build out all of our workflows. So as long as you can describe in depth what you want to get built, and you have the necessary systems and you have the necessary context, Claude Code is going to build out everything for you. And that's the really, really powerful way. So again, this is essentially just a quick overview of what Claude Code is. So now let's move on to why you actually should use Claude Code. Number one is the speed. We can build complex voice AI logics faster than dragging nodes in visual editors. So we can automatically create prompts. We can automatically configure our voice agents. We can automatically design any N8N workflow. We can add tools. We can essentially build out our entire voice AI agent structure and system using Claude Code, essentially very, very quickly, right? Because it's AI. Then control, right? We have direct access to the code, enabling Claude Code skills, right? With near instant creation of voice AI agents and workflows. And I'll explain how this process works a little bit later, just stick around. Then scalability, right? So because we can instantly create these voice AI agents, we can have a lot of control and we can have a lot of scalability over our architecture and infrastructure, right? Due to the speed and control of these workflows. So it's going to become easier for us to ship these to clients. It's going to become more efficient in terms of creating these voice agents. And it's just going to make the development process so much easier. So let's move on to the old approach of how we originally used to create voice agents. So I've kind of summed this up into two components. Number one, this is a chart of all the different components you see of a voice agent. So for example, let's say we have Retail AI, which is a voice AI agent platform. It essentially packages all of these different components of our voice agent and it gives it to us so we can actually go ahead and create it, okay? And these are all the different components. So beforehand, number one, we have to create the voice agent manually, right? We had to create the Twilio number. We had to configure the, TTS. We had to configure the ASR. We had to choose our model. We had to write our prompt, right? And then we also have to choose our voice. So we have to do all of this stuff manually. While that is great and we can have good control, it just takes a while to do it. And then the second part is building the workflow. So this is a little system around how a webhook works. So again, we had to configure Retail AI. This is system A. If you've watched the video on Voice Agents full course, you'll understand how this works. So we had to configure webhooks. We had to configure tools inside Retail. We had to send that information over to N8N. We have to understand N8N. We have to understand all the nodes. We have to build out all the systems. We have to diagnose issues. If something breaks, we've got to go ahead and fix it. So we have to understand all these systems and we have to build it. And then we also have to maintain it as well. So with the Claude Code, it essentially replaces this with the right setup. And that moves me on to kind of our next section, which is the new setup that we're going to be using through Claude Code. So, I've tried to make this as simple as possible. So just make sure you just listen here because this is actually how we're going to be creating these systems using Claude Code. So on the left right here, we have us, okay? And the two systems essentially that we're going to be using is going to be Claude and what we call Visual Studio Code, which is an IDE, an integrated development environment, right? Which gives us access to these different coding languages, which is Python, Node.js, JSON, okay? And when we combine a powerful LLM like Claude, which is very, efficient and very knowledgeable in writing code with an integrated development environment, it essentially gives us endless possibilities. Okay, so those are the two systems we're going to be using, Claude and Visual Studio Code, which is giving us access to all the code. So Claude can use the code to then use APIs to then go ahead and create systems in retail and N8N. So that's the overall, spectrum of everything. Okay. And then also by installing Claude in Visual Studio Code, it allows us, right, to simply go ahead and use natural language to type to Claude, okay? And Claude's going to understand our response. It's going to look up all the API documentation. It's going to go in Visual Studio Code. It's going to use the APIs. It's going to do everything for us. Okay, so that's essentially the overall system of how it works. And then something that's also very important, right, which is installing a necessary context in Claude to successfully fill our, demand or prompt. So think of it as us right here. We're prompting Claude, and Claude's going to be accessing all of these different things to create our voice agent using Visual Studio Code, using all of our coding softwares in our IDE. So again, we're going to be installing these different systems inside Claude so it can successfully go ahead and build out everything. So again, inside Claude, we need to install an N8N MCP, right? I'll explain what that is later and how we can do it. We need to install a retail.md, which is essentially just a text file and a kind of like a system prompt on how to build voice agents, the prompting structure, all of the API documentation. We need to install N8N skills, which essentially is giving Claude access to, how to design N8N workflows, what all the different nodes mean. And then we're also going to be giving it another system prompt on N8N and Claude and our overall project, architecture. Okay, so when we install all these skills into Claude, it now has the necessary context, so it can then use all of our coding languages and software inside our IDE. And once it has all of that context and it has the ability, what it's going to do is it's going to use our coding formats, and it's then going to design our voice agent via API. So as long as the system has an API, you will be able to go ahead and build literally anything, right? As long as you give it the necessary context, it's going to work. So it's going to be using, I'm going to be using retail and N8N inside this full course because they have the necessary API documentation. And I think they're one of the most, best platforms in building these actual voice agents. So that's what it's going to do is it's going to use this API and it's going to build retail. It's going to create the voice agent. It's going to do everything. It's going to build the workflows, get the webhooks, create all the tools. And that's essentially a full system overview on how everything works. So yeah, now let's actually jump into our next section, which is going to be getting all of this set up so we can actually install the full system so it can run smoothly and work. Then after we've done that, we're going to dive into actually building everything. Okay, I just want to make one point very clear before we actually dive into setting up these systems, building out everything automatically. And it is, I still think that you should have a very good understanding on how these systems work. So how Claude Code is working, what it's doing to your workflows, how retail works, how to prompt agents, all the different settings, how N8N works. And that's because let's say if something breaks or, something's going wrong with your workflows or you need to diagnose something, the client wants a change, and, you have no idea on how these systems work, then you could just kind of be, you're going to be stuck, right? Whilst Claude and all these different systems, they can build it automatically, I still think it's very important for you to have a good understanding on what it's actually doing and all of the systems involved as well. So I just want to make that point very clear before we kind of move on. Okay, and welcome to the next section and probably the most important section inside this entire video, which is going to be installing Claude, setting up Claude, and giving it the necessary context and details so it can effectively create voice AI agents. Again, as I said before, if you do not do this step correctly, it's not going to create the workflows correctly. It's not going to create any of the voice agents. So again, this is the most important part in this video. So make sure you pay attention. I'm going to be going everything, through step by step as much as I can, and explaining everything in a very simple way so you can follow along and get everything set up. So let's get into it. So the very first thing that we want to do is I'm just going over to Claude, and what you want to do is you want to be either on the Pro or Max plan. This is not going to work on the free plan of Claude. Again, depending in your country that you're from, I believe this is in USD, so it's going to be 17 US per month for Pro subscription. That should give you plenty of usage, plenty of, things within inside Claude. It will give you access to Claude Code, co-work, unlimited projects, everything. So again, I just want to reiterate, this is not available on Pro. All you need to do is go over to Claude, sign up, make sure you are on a Pro account. For example, you can go try Claude, and obviously it's putting into me my Claude account. As you can see, I have my Pro plan right here. I've already got my Pro plan in there. I'm not sure if you can see it, but again, I'm on a Pro plan. This will only work from Pro. Okay. And once you have installed that, great. That's going to be step one. Make sure you're on Claude and you're on the Pro plan. Okay. And then from there, also another very important thing that I want to mention as well is the Claude Code docs. So if you ever get stuck on something in Claude Code, you can refer to these documents, Claude Code docs right here, and you can refer to them and it'll help you around Claude, although you may not need it because you're watching this video. But just remember, you can go through and read through these documents and everything. So there are a few ways you can access Claude right here. We can see there's a bunch of different ways. Number one is the terminal way. This is probably the most cost-effective and efficient way to run Claude Code right here. And you can see I will leave these docs down below in the link in the description so you can refer to them. But again, there is essentially different ways we can run Claude. It is a native install, which is through the terminal. We can run it through an IDE, which is something like Visual Studio Code or Anti-Gravity. We can run it through a desktop app. We can run it through the web, okay? We can run it through JetBrains as well, which I've never used before. But the way we're going to be doing it, and the most efficient and simple, easy way, is going to be through Visual Studio Code right here. But of course, if you want to run it through the terminal, you can refer to these documents, okay? And you can just go ahead and follow all of these different installs. Depending on your system, I'm on Mac, so I would use this. If you're on Windows, use this. But we're going to be using Visual Studio Code right here. And the very first thing that we need to do is we need to install Visual Studio Code as a application on your computer. So all you need to do is go to Visual Studio Code right here, right? I'll leave this link down below in the link description, right? And then you have to download it. So depending if you're on Mac or Windows, make sure you download it and you have everything up and running inside your computer. So again, that's going to be the two things that you're going to need, and the only things you're going to need in terms of the necessary systems downloaded on your computer. Of course, I'm going to show you how to do it through Retail and 8N and everything, but just make sure you've got the Pro plan and then you've also downloaded Visual Studio Code. Of course, if you want to use Anti-Gravity, that's also essentially something very similar to Visual Studio Code. It is actually built on Visual Studio Code. It has just more AI aspects. But I've found Visual Studio Code is a much more beginner-friendly way just so you can get your head around everything. And as I said before, Visual Studio Code is essentially an IDE, which is an integrated development environment, which gives us access to a bunch of different coding languages, which we can then install Claude on so it can write a bunch of code, right? That's why we're downloading both of these systems. Okay, awesome. So once you have downloaded Visual Studio Code, you can open up a little dashboard like this, okay? And the very first thing that you want to do is you want to install Claude Code on Visual Studio Code. So you can come over to the left-hand side right here, and then you want to search Claude Code within inside our marketplace right here. So make sure you click this little application button. Extensions is what it's called. Come down to Claude Code and then go ahead and install. I've already got it installed. But once you do install it, you will need to go ahead and sign in through your Claude Code account that you created on the Pro plan. And then you'll get access to it. Okay. So once you have installed that, awesome. We're all good to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to our Claude Code here. I'm going to click X and then I'm going to open up this and we can see you should have Claude Code right here through the little chat bar icon. Again, it may ask you to sign up, right? Either after you've installed it, depending on when you're watching this video, because these systems change a lot. It may ask you to sign up after you've installed it through the applications part, or it'll ask you to install or sign up through here, right here, okay? Now, before we even get to installing all the systems, a setting we want to customize, we want to come down to here, we want to come down into settings, okay? And then we want to search Claude Code settings, okay? And these are going to be all the settings that I use for Claude Code. So the one that we want to tick, which is going to be very useful, is this going to be this one. So allow dangerously skip permissions. So make sure to select this on. And what this is essentially doing is it's telling Claude to bypass all of the permissions within our laptop. So when Claude is creating files, it's accessing APIs, we have a few different modes down here, right? So just make sure to switch this on if you want everything to be automatic and efficient as possible, okay? So as I said before, I'm going to come out, make sure to switch that on. I'm just going to open this up, and we can see Claude have different modes. So the first mode is ask before edits. So essentially, Claude is going to ask you each time it makes an edit to a file, a piece of code, each time it creates a code within inside your browser, it's going to ask you for all of these edits, okay? And then the other mode is going to be edit automatically. So again, it's going to do this automatically, but it's still going to ask you for permission, okay? And then the other one is going to be plan mode. This is essentially where Claude Code will plan out everything step by step. And then the other method, which is the most efficient method, is going to be bypass permission. So that's going to be the method that we're going to be using 80 to 90% of the time for everything, okay? Then also, the other thing that you want to do is you want to give Claude Code access to a folder and a file, okay? And essentially access to your computer. So what you want to do, obviously, depending on your systems, I'm using Mac right here. If I come to here and then I go over to open folder, right? And then I've selected my folder, which is going to be Claude Code right here. So make sure you open a folder and you install it inside Claude Code. Now, what this is going to be doing is it's going to be giving Claude Code access to your computer. It's going to give it the ability to create files, to create code, and essentially access your terminal and write everything. So make sure you've opened up a folder inside Claude Code. Okay, awesome. So now we literally have everything set up. We've got Visual Studio Code set up. We've got the necessary settings. You've opened up the file. You've opened up the folder. Now what we're going to do is, if we come back over to our little whiteboard, we're going to be installing all the necessary skills and everything Claude Code needs to create these voice AI agents. So the very first thing and the most complex thing that we're going to be doing inside this setup is we're going to be giving Claude Code what we call an N8N MCP and an N8N skills, okay? So in Claude, we're essentially, what we want to do is we want to give it the necessary context and the necessary skills to create all of these systems. Now, we can't just go ahead and ask Claude to use N8N API. We can't go ahead and do that, right? We need to install the necessary context and the necessary skills so Claude can use that to create our workflows. Okay, and the first thing that we want to do is we want to create essentially a system prompt for Claude for creating N8N workflows. So I'm going to name this Claude underscore N8N dot MD. And essentially what this is a way for Claude to access kind of like a system prompt. So each time we type in Claude, it's going to have access to our terminal. It's going to have access to all of our files. And essentially, we're going to be using Claude to generate a system prompt for Claude on how to design N8N workflows, okay? And then we're going to do the same thing for Retail AI. So how to use Retail AI, how to use the API documentations, and then also how to create prompts as well for voice agents. So those are kind of the two use cases for an MD file that we're going to do. So for Claude, I'm going to say something like this. I'm going to say, hey, Claude, I need you to help me create a Claude N8N, system prompt for this project. Basically, what I've set up for this project is I want you to create all of my N8N workflows. So I'm going to be giving you access to two different tools. I'm going to be giving you access to an N8N MCP server and then also N8N skills to effectively create high quality N8N workflows. So again, I am going to put that in right here, and let's just design this a little bit better. Right here, so we can just understand it a little bit more effectively. Okay, so essentially what I'm asking Claude right now is I'm asking Claude to go ahead and create a, MD file, right, which is going to be a system prompt. And then I'm just giving it a little bit of context on what I'm going to be doing, right? And then I'm going to say, you will use these two tools to create N8N workflows, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and send that off right here. And what Claude's going to be doing is it's going to be creating this file inside our MD, okay? So again, we can see, let me read the file that you have opened for first. The file is empty. So let me check the project directory for any other context. So what you'll notice quickly with Claude Code is we can see all of its actions. So we can see what it's actually doing. And we can see right here, if we come down, we can see it's thinking, we can see it's reading the files. So Claude is laying this out step by step for us inside the terminal. And bang, you can see it's gone ahead and created everything right there, which is going to be our MD prompt essentially, right? So what this is going to be using each time we text Claude is this is going to act as kind of like our system prompt. So again, we're going to be creating one for Claude, right, as the N8N workflow builder. Then we're going to be creating one for retail to design retail prompts and voice agents and tools and that. And then we're going to be creating one more, which is to essentially an overall prompt on how to, design, full voice agents with the workflows, with Claude, and everything like that. So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install an N8N MCP server and then also N8N skills so Claude can actually create these workflows. Okay, and another core reason of why I chose N8N is number one, because they have all of their MCP servers and they have everything documented. So inside this GitHub repository, we actually have the entire N8N MCP and we have the entire N8N skills. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this to Claude, and essentially now Claude can create pretty much any workflow. So again, I'm going to go over to the website that this guy's built. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his name, but shout out to this guy. Legend. He's gone ahead and actually, created everything in terms of the MCP and the skills, which is amazing. So we can give this to Claude, and it's going to be able to create all of our workflows, which is super cool. So we come over to its website right here. We can see build N8N workflows with AI. So we can connect AI to N8N and let it build, deploy, and debug workflows for you. Okay. So we can see, we don't have to copy and paste JSONs, no screenshotting everything, right? And we can see that these are kind of all of the things that we have inside these two repositories that we're going to be giving to Claude so it can go ahead and master everything. So again, we've got complete node coverage. It has access to all 1,084 nodes with 99% of property accuracy. So essentially what this means is inside these two repositories, it's documented all of the parameters, every option, everything is perfectly documented inside Claude. Inside N8N, so Claude can refer to, right? We've got over, 2,700 workflow templates, so AI optimized systematic searches across your entire N8N template library. The AI finds the perfect template, auto updates it to the latest node version and validates everything, right? We've got 80 to 90% of, we can save 80 to 90% on tokens with intelligent partial updates. Real-time monitoring, right? Full N8N API access. So you're going to need your N8N API key, which is what I'll show you. And then it's always current as well. So, this is really, really cool. Right here, what he's done. So you're going to need two repositories. You're going to need the N8N MCP and then the N8N skills as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come over. I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to come back to Claude Code and I'm going to say, look, we'll say here is the N8N MCP server. Just say N8N MCP, and then we're going to say here is the N8N skills. So now what Claude Code is going to do is it's going to look at this URL and it's going to look at all of the different files, everything inside here. It's going to store it back in Claude Code, and then only when it needs to use specific parts of the MCP server, of the skills, it's going to access that within its file knowledge, right? Because instead of obviously pasting this in all his files, pasting in everything, okay, we can actually install it as just kind of knowledge, and it's going to access it only when it needs to. So this is the purpose of giving it the necessary context. So each time Claude gets a request and a response from us, it's going to say, okay, we're going to use our main system prompt. We're going to access, retail. Okay, so how do we design this agent? What APIs do we need, right? And then we're going to access our N8N. Okay, we're going to access our N8N MCP. What is the workflow that the user wants built? What specific nodes that we need? So as long as it has all the necessary context, it can just only pick out and pluck out what it needs. So this is what we're doing, and this is how we're installing everything, okay? So we're going to say, here's the N8N skills right here, okay? And then what we're going to say is we're going to say, please go ahead and research these two URLs and update your MD file to make it better, to create better workflows, okay? So we're going to paste that in right here, and you can see Claude is going to use its web fetch function right here, so we can see what Claude is doing step by step, okay? Saying, look, it's going to search up the respiratory, it's going to look at the N8N skills, so it's searching up all these files, it's going to dig deeper, and it's going to go into both respiratories right here, and it's going to make our system prompt a little bit better. So we can see Claude has finished its research, and we can see the summary of what it's done. So all 20 MCP tools with the exact name, parameters, and code snippets have been updated. The template first rule, so over 2,709 templates exist, okay? Default parameter warning, silent executions, extract webhooks, everything has been updated inside, okay, this system prompt right here. Okay, so now that we've updated Claude Code, now what we're going to do, right, if we come back to our chart just to make this easier, is we're now going to install the N8N MCP and N8N skills inside Claude, and we're going to give Claude, obviously, access to it via our IDE, okay? So then it can then use our codes to create stuff through N8N, okay? So, again, simply all that we're going to do is we're going to come up to here. I'm just going to go ahead and copy this. Okay. And we're going to say to Claude, all right, we're going to say to Claude, we're going to say, now what I want you to do is to install both the MCP server and the N8N skills so you can effectively create flawless N8N workflows. And what we're going to do is we're just going to paste in this, and we're going to say install this MCP, okay, server. Then we're going to give it its link to the respiratory, and then we're going to say install these N8N skills, or install these skills. So it's going to, obviously, once it's read it, it's going to look at all the files that we have inside here, for example, and it's going to install it within inside its memory and within inside, obviously, Claude Code. So now it can access it and build all of these workflows right here, as I said before, okay? I'm going to say, please make sure Claude Code has access to these in this project so it can build out the workflows. So we're going to put that in right here, and this might take a few minutes. So I will, depending on how long it takes, I will cut back to this, but we can see it's fetching out everything from both the respiratories. So as I said before, it's going to be going into all these files, the MCP and the skills right here. You can see, and then it's going to get that. It's going to come back to our IDE, and it's going to install everything within here. And that's going to be our first part done to essentially effectively create all of our workflows. Okay, so as you can see, it's asking right here, cloud or self-hosted URL. Again, we're going to be using a cloud version of N8N. So again, we're going to answer that. Now it's going to create the MCP JSON for the project. Again, I've already tested this. I've already been building agents, so we can see these skills are already installed. I think I tried to delete all the files so I can do it freshly. But this will work. Obviously, it's created the MCP. You can see that right there. But again, I've already installed the skills on my laptop. I'm not sure if I've deleted it. But again, it's going to be the exact same process. It's going to install everything. As long as you follow this step by step, everything's going to work. Okay, so we can see Claude is working array. It's really cool. We can see all of its thoughts right here. We can see the configurations it's running, right? So we can see the skills are installed, and now it's creating the MCP JSON, right, for the project with your URL and API key. Okay, so those are going to be the two things that we need to give to Claude to successfully go into our workflows and to validate everything. So we can see that everything is here. So it's soon going to ask for our, there we go, API and URL. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're simply going to go ahead and provide these to Claude, and it's going to update our N8N JSON right here. So we can see our URL and our API key. So to do that, go over to N8N, okay? And by the way, you will need to be on a paid account. We come over to the pricing right here. Again, this does change. You'll need to be on a paid account. You can't be on a free trial. So again, I recommend using the starter plan. If you're using the cloud version, it's the easiest version to give access to Claude Code. So I recommend using the cloud version right here. So I am in my N8N workflow. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get the URL right here. So again, we're going to copy everything up and towards the end of the cloud. Come back to Claude, and we're going to say, here is the URL. And we'll just say for N8N. I'm going to say here is the API key for N8N. Okay. So now to get the API key, very simple. I'm going to come over to settings. I'm going to go N8N API. Again, this will only be available if you're on the paid version. Create API key, and we'll just name this Claude Code. And then expiration, it really doesn't matter. If you're going to use this for a while, just set no expiration. Okay, but we'll just do 30 days for now. I'm going to click save, copy, and then I'm going to come back to Claude, and I'm going to put in, here's the API key for N8N. I'm going to say, please update everything so it works. Okay, and go ahead and click send. So now it has our instance, and then it has our API key. It's going to edit everything inside the MCP. We can see right there. It's doing this live as we speak. So now once you've done this, we're now going to test if it can actually create workflows, if it can actually create instances inside our N8N account, right? So we can see everything is ready. Our N8N instance, MCP server, N8N skills, everything is done. One last thing that we have to do is restart Claude Code, to update the JSON. Okay, so now we just need to restart our Visual Studio Code. So to do that, you can simply go up to here and just do quit. I'm on a Mac, so I'm just going to quit it and restart it and come back in. Okay, awesome. So we can see I've restarted it, right? And if we go into the past conversations, we can see that that is essentially everything. So now everything should be all good to go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to test everything inside N8N so it actually works. So we're going to say, we'll just say, hey, Claude, I just want to test if our N8N MCP server is working. So what I want you to do is I just want you to search for a webhook node inside our N8N MCP server, please. So we can see if we go ahead and build that out right here, we can see, okay, we just need to make sure it is on bypass permissions right here. And we can see we've queried all of our webhooks, right? And we can see those are the two nodes that it has access to inside N8N as well, okay? And then also just to verify that we actually, have everything, we're going to say, hey, N8N, hey, Claude Code, what skills do you have access to currently right now? Just want to make sure everything's working, And you can see right here, you can always just ask Claude Code, if you don't understand anything, if you don't know anything, you can just ask Claude Code what to actually do, and it's going to go ahead and do it. So we can see 8 skills that it has access to, perfect. Those are everything that we install. So this should be working now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to test a real workflow. So I'm going to say something like this, okay? Hey, Claude Code, I want you to build 2 N8N workflows. The first workflow is going to be a check availability workflow inside a Google Calendar node inside N8N. So I want you to create a webhook trigger, okay? And then I want you to have an AI agent that will use OpenAI 4.1 as the model. And then I want it to check a calendar slot inside a Google Calendar node, check for availability. And then I want you to respond to that webhook using the available time, okay, using the N8N AI agent. And the second workflow I want you to build is the book appointment workflow, which is going to be the exact same thing. So webhook trigger, then the AI agent, but this is going to be to book the appointment inside a Google Calendar node. And then from there, I want you to respond, obviously saying if the appointment has been booked or not. So that's just a general example of how you can prompt Claude Code. Obviously, the more detail you'll give it on how to design the workflow, the better the output is, right? So that's something that you're still going to have to do is as long as you can describe what workflow you want to, you want it to build, it can do everything automatically. So we go ahead and just click paste right there. Now Claude Code is going to build it inside our N8N instance. So we can see if this can actually work, right? So you should be getting the idea on how we can automatically create these things. And again, this is only one part of this course. The other second part of this course is going to be setting up how we can automatically create voice agents as well. But you can see how Claude Code is able to create all of these workflows. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create automatic voice agents through the retail API, okay? And then we're going to combine the two, essentially, is what we're doing before. And that's going to give us our complete agent. And then from there, we're going to be going into real world builds as well. So we can see it's planning out everything. It's getting all the nodes that it needs. So this was something that I wanted to refer to earlier. As you can see, it's going just to refer to our Claude N8N and our Claude MD only when it needs to. That's something that's really cool. So after we describe the workflow, it's going to say, okay, what nodes do we actually need to do? What systems do we need to understand within inside N8N? It's going to search for those, search for the necessary skills, and only use what it needs to build out all of the workflows, right? So we can see you might be able to do this while I'm just speaking to you now. You can see it's going to validate everything right here. So I think it's going to complete anytime soon while I'm speaking to you. So we can just give it, you can see, you can even see that there is some errors, right? So we can see both has an error. The webhook needs on error, continue regular output. Okay. So you can see how it's able to design workflows, update them, validate them, right? So we can see it's now coming up as success. We can see previously it was false. So you can see how powerful this stuff really is, guys. So they are updated. So now if we come back to N8N, okay, come back to our settings again. This is all live. We can see that those two workflows have been created. So let's go ahead and check them. Okay, bang, right? So if you've watched my videos before, you know previously we had to automatically build all of these things, right? We automatically have to configure the workflow, design the agent prompt, right? So you can see that this is the two workflows that have automatically been created by our Claude Code agent. So if we come in and we just check everything, we can see it's done the post webhook, right? We can see it's using the respond to webhook node, okay? And now we can come into our agent. We can see the system message. System message could be a little bit better, but again, the more you prompt Claude, you can say, please design the system message to do X, Y, Z inside the agent. It's going to do it. So we can see that's the system message right inside here. And then we can see it's designed the OpenAI model 4.1, which is what we asked it to do. And then we can see it's used the Google Calendar tool. Obviously, we're going to need to, connect our credentials, which is something that Claude Code can't do. But all we need to do is just go ahead and connect it. Okay. And then it's used the respond to webhook node right there with the first incoming item. So you can see that's how it's able to create all of these workflows. So if we come back in and we can check the other workflow, which is going to be the book appointment one, okay, we can come into the webhook. We can see it's all configured very nicely. You can see the AI agent. It's got the system message prompt, right? Include the start time, end time. It's got the model. So everything's looking really, really good in terms of this, right? And we can see the start and end time as well, right? Probably want to switch these to let the model define. That's probably going to be the best thing to do. But you can see how you can see how it's able to create all of these workflows. So that is going to be our first part done in terms of installing our MCP, installing our skills, installing the MD prompts to create our workflow. So now N8N should be able to create all of our workflows that we'll be able to do. Okay, so the next part, obviously we've got the MCPs that's done. The next part is what we're going to do is we're going to install a retail MD file, and then we're also going to install an N8N and Claude one. So inside this retail MD file, we're going to install obviously a few things. We're going to install the necessary API documentation because remember, Claude Code is going to be using this API documentation on retail. And then we're also going to be installing a example of a system prompt and how to create these agents. So go into retail, use the API documentation, create the system prompt, then create the workflows, okay? And then get the workflows, get the webhooks, create the tools, and update them, okay? That's what we're going to be doing. And then we're going to create an overall prompt as well, so N8N and Claude prompt, to then go ahead and tell Claude on how to combine the two. So use the retail prompt, use the API documentation, use N8N MCP skills, use the N8N skills to create these voice agents. And that's what's going to bring our entire system together. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to come down to our folder right here. We're going to create a new file and we're going to name it retail .md. Okay, so now this is going to be our third MD file. And in this MD file, what we're going to put and tell Claude, right, is we're going to put in all of the necessary, functions and lookups for their API documentation. Okay, so again, I'm going to be referring to the documentation right here from Retail AI. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be giving Claude all of this documentation to create voice agents. We're going to be storing it inside its context inside the MD, okay? And then we're also going to give it an example on how to prompt the voice agents using this little example of the prompt. We're going to put it in one MD file, and then Claude's going to have all the necessary documentation, just like it did with obviously N8N, to then go ahead and create a voice agent. So again, we're going to be using all of these different functions to create phone calls, to test the agent, to create chat functions, SMSs, create phone numbers, create voice agents, customize the voice agents in terms of the LLM, the different voices. So essentially, if we give all of the essential documentation to, Claude, right, we can then obviously give it the necessary context and it can create everything right here. So I'm going to go to API reference, and what we're going to do is I just want to make sure it can actually, yeah, sweet. So that's going to be this first thing. So we're going to copy this all the way up until references, and then we're going to come back to Claude Code, and we're going to say, hey, Claude, now what I want you to do is I want you to create another MD file inside retail.md. And what this MD file is going to be about is it's going to have all the necessary API documentation for Retail AI, which is going to be our voice AI platform. And I'm going to be giving you a API link with all the necessary documentations. And what I want you to do is I want you to search up everything within inside the documentations, and I want you to store it inside retail.md as a little bit of context. And also within that documentation, I also want you to structure it on how to use and look at the user's request, search up the necessary API documentation, okay? And then if you are creating a prompt, use a example that the user provides you, okay? And that's what I want this MD file to be about. So remember to look at the API references, document everything, look at the user request, and then if you need a prompt, make sure to go ahead and look at a prompt example as well, okay? So again, a little bit of a long prompt, right? But again, this is very important to creating the voice agent. The more context you can give it to Claude, the better, okay? And then what we want to say is we want to say here is the link for the API documentation right here. And we'll just put it at the bottom because it's just easier for Claude right here. So I'm going to put that in right here. And this may take a little while because it's going to use its web search functions. It's going to update essentially everything inside the file right here. So we can see fetch retail API documentations from the doc site, structure and write a retail MDA prompt with API references, usage guide, and prompt examples right here. Okay. So it's looking at everything right here. Like essentially all the necessary things. So this is going to take a while because depending on what we use, as we're doing with the N8N MCP server, it's only going to use the necessary functions and the necessary API documentation, right? So again, it's looking up everything. It's going to store it inside here. And then once this is done, I'll show you what it looks like. And then I'm also going to give it an example of a prompt and how to create a effective prompt as well, because it doesn't quite understand on how to create a prompt and how to use markdown formats and all these different things. So again, I'm going to come back to you once we have everything documented inside here. Okay, awesome. So we can see it's finished up everything, right? It researched all the necessary tools inside the docs, inside retail, and we can see the structure of our MD prompt. So we can see if we come up to the top, right, how to use this document, look at the user request, find the matching API section. If the prompt is needed, which is what we're going to give it next, okay? The general prompt field in retail LLM or the global prompt in the conversational flow is where the agent's behavioral personality is defined, and then always use the user's own example as the base, okay? That's very important because we don't want Claude to make up how we're going to obviously use this. And we can see it's got in-depth documentation, table of contents, everything on essentially designing inside retail, which is really cool. So now what we're going to do is inside here, again, I've just compacted it, right? So it can have more context. Now what we're going to do is we're going to provide it with more context, right? And context specifically about our prompt. So I've got a little document here. I'm going to paste this in, and I'm just going to give Claude as an example on a prompt. So I'll quickly run you through it, right? Of course, we've got the role. This is the role of the agent. We've got the current time. So the current time in the user's time zone, right? Which is just going to be whatever. So again, depending on your time zone, replace this. I'm going to put Brisbane, Australia. And then we'll do make sure you use retail's dynamic variables. So again, depending on the time zone you are in, make sure to replace this. We've got the task. So again, search up how to correctly format a current time dynamic variable inside the voice platform. Okay, very important. And next, we've got the task. So again, this is the task of the voice agent that must follow a chain of thought prompting process. So for example, right, it'll be step 1, create the caller. Step 2, check availability, etc. Then we have specifics. So the specifics such as the hold time, pausing, back channeling, any specifics on how the agent should handle the task in the conversation. Got a little bit of context about the business. We've got an example conversation and scenario, and then we've got tools, right? This is very important. So this is a section, all the tools that the agent will use. Ensure the tools are mentioned throughout the task in the prompt example. So for example, check availability and book appointment. Make sure these tool names are the same when creating any function as well, okay? And then we're also going to put, hey, Claude, above is an example of a prompt. So please inject that within the retail.md. Also inside the retail.md, can you please put a section also to help Claude design the tools as well? So again, it's going to be grabbing the webhook from N8N, and then it's also going to be putting that in the tool section within inside retail as well, please. So again, we're going to put that in there, and then we're going to press that off. And what that's going to do now is it's going to update the retail MD, which is going to be our little system prompt right there. Okay, so that's going to be what we have right there. And then finally, our last MD that we're going to do is an overall project prompt. This is going to be a quick prompt inside retail to essentially say, okay, now that we've created everything, right, as we can see right here, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go ahead and use the retail AMD. I want you to create the agent. I want you to use the prompt example. Okay. And then after that, I want you to create the workflows inside N8N using our MD files, using the MCP servers. And then I want you to get that workflow, get that webhook, and then put it in as a tool. And that's essentially pretty much everything, okay, that we have in terms of that. And then also in terms of testing agents, which is what we're going to get into later, we can use like the documentation as well throughout here. But that's essentially that we have right here. Okay, so again, it's going to update the MD. It's just searching up on the webhooks because I did believe it missed some of the tools. So it's just searching up. Obviously, we can see right here LLM TTS and then function calling as well. Okay, which is very important because it needs to have context on how to add the tools in as well. Right. So once that is done, as you can see, it's checking out dynamic variables work. It's going to update this, and then we just have one MD file left to create for Claude, right? So if we come back to here inside our whiteboard, right, we've just got one MD file left, and then we can actually go ahead and build our first agent and get into building everything. Okay, awesome. So we can see that this is done. So it's added two major sections. The retail MD is going to be the prompt template, and then it's added the designing tools as well. So the custom functions for retail AI and then N8N as well. So it's also added dynamic variables, which is really important. So that's essentially everything that we have. And then of course, depending on your time zone, make sure you change this. So awesome. That's going to be our prompt. What we're going to do is we're going to do /clear, essentially just clears our conversation. And then we're going to make one final MD, which is just going to be project, and then we'll just do prompt.md. Okay. And what this MD file is going to be is essentially going to be an overall system prompt for Claude to use to essentially handle any request on building our voice agents. So in Claude, I'm going to say something like, okay, this specific, MD is going to be a system prompt for Claude to essentially help you design any voice agent. Okay. So that's what it's going to be. And again, after we've done that, that's all the context that it should need in order to design these agents. So I'm going to simply go into Claude and just say something like this. Okay. Hey, Claude, I want you to create a project prompt.md file. So I want you to look at the project prompt.md file that I've gone in and created. And then essentially what this project is going to be about is automatically creating voice agents. And I want you to design this project prompt in this MD file for you to refer to on how to create voice agents. So essentially step one is going to be understanding the user's request and looking at the retail MD file to then go ahead and access the necessary API documentations, use the prompt example, create the prompt, and then from there, configure any customization options in terms of the voice, the model, anything to do with the agent settings, anything that the user, requires about their voice agent. And then from there, the user may give you a workflow to design. So inside N8N, and that's where I want you to use your N8N MD and your N8N skills and your N8N MCP server that you have installed to then create the workflows effectively for the voice agent. And then finally from there, what I want you to do is I want you to then get that webhook from that N8N file. And then I want you to create a tool inside the voice agent that you created firstly for the user using the prompt example. And then I want you to create a tool, attach it to the agent. And that's essentially what this entire project prompt is going to be about. So I just want you to create a little, file that you can refer to on actually how to build these agents using the necessary context and API documentation that you have. So I'm going to say something like that. Of course, it's a little bit long, but we'll put it in bypass submission and we'll send it off right there. And that's essentially going to be our final MD file right here. So we can see understanding the project prompt, and it's reading all the other things. So it's going to create it inside this file. And then I'll get back to you in terms of the prompt that it has. And then once this has everything, we're now going to dive into actually creating these voice agents through retail as well. Okay, and that's it. We can see that it's created the project prompt now. So Claude should have everything to go ahead and create these voice agents. So we can see this is the prompt, understand the user's request, create the prompt, configure the agent via the API, build the N8N workflows, create the tools, and then verify and report and give the user a summary. So that's everything that we have now. Great job if you followed along. We've got everything we need. We've installed the skills. We've done everything. So we come back to our little whiteboard, right? Essentially, all this is done, right? So now what we can do, sorry, that was a bad circle. Now what we can do is we'll go ahead and test everything, and let's jump into our first simple build so you can actually see how these systems work We'll verify everything. We'll talk to the agent inside retail. We'll look at all the end-to-end workflows just to make sure it's all good. So yeah, now let's head into the next section where we're going to actually start building real-world voice agents through Claude. Okay, so now let's actually go ahead and build our very first simple agent using Retail AI and N8N as well. So essentially, what we're going to be doing, as I explained before, is we're going to kind of be breaking this up into 3 different stages inside Claude. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure it's in plan mode right here so we can think out its thoughts process, okay? And then we're going to ask it to create the prompt, create the agent inside retail, okay? Configure the voice, configure its personality, configure any settings. And then we are also, then after it's done that, we're going to ask it to create the N8N workflows automatically. It's going to get those webhooks. It's going to add it in as tools inside retail. And then finally, once it's done both of that, we're going to ask it to test the system using retail's API. So we're going to break this up into 3 different parts, 3 different stages. Again, it's really good just to break up everything in Claude so it can get its best output for each type of prompt. So for the first thing, I'm going to say something like this. Hey, Claude, I want you to create only a AI agent using Retail AI, and it's going to be for a dental clinic. The agent will check available slots and will also book slots for patients calling in. The dental clinic's going to be called Bright Smiles Dental, based in Melbourne, Australia. And the agent's name must be Emily. It must be a Australian voice, and just make the voice sound natural as well. And that's pretty much it. Only design the agent prompt in retail. Do not yet design any N8N workflows. That'll be a part of my next request. Again, we're going to go ahead and send that off right here. See, there was a few transcription issues, but the agent should, yeah, you can see using Retail AI, right? They likely meant that. So again, the agent is going to go through all of our docs. It's going to understand our requests, right? And you can see I specifically mentioned not to develop any N8N workflows within this instance. You guys can try this to do it all in one, but I found the best output is creating in those 3 stages I've mentioned before. So creating the prompt, creating its persona, creating the settings inside retail, then creating the webhooks and creating the workflows in N8N, adding it to the agent, then testing it. So I found that's the best way just to break it up into the agent so it can really hone in each part and each step. Because I find if you try and do it all at once, you know, sometimes the output for the N8N workflow, sometimes everything is not going to be, you know, the best, right? So we can see right here, everything is going. It's going to ask us a few questions. So a quick couple questions before I finalize the prompt. What services does Bright Smiles offer? So again, we'll just do general dentistry, okay? Then what are the clinic's operating hours? We'll do 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So again, you can get really in depth about these prompts. You can tell Claude essentially anything you want, and it's going to design the prompt using our format that we did it, right? How long is each standard appointment slot? So you can see it's asking all the right questions in here. I was pretty general with my prompt, but the more specific you are, the better, and the better the prompt's going to be, okay? So we can see it's asking our questions here, and it's creating a little prompt for us. So we can see we've got it in plan mode, and the reason why we do this is because we can actually see what it's going to design, okay? So if you can put it in automatic mode, it's not going to do a plan, right? So we can see this is going to be its plan. Create a Retail AI agent prompt for Bright Smiles Dental, right? The context is this, okay? So, you know, when you're reading through and when you're designing your prompts and your agents through retail in Claude, having this plan mode is very useful because we can see what we can see what Claude's actually going to do. So again, it's going to create a retail voice agent prompt for a dental clinic using Bright Smiles Dental. The agent's name is Emily with an Australian voice. Emily handles 2 tasks, checking available appointment slots and booking appointments for patients calling in. No N8N workflows being built yet. Awesome. This is everything, okay? What will be created? A new file, right? That's fine, okay? And then a agent configuration summary. So that's going to be the name, the business, the language, the time zone variable, which is really good, okay? The voice, tasks, and tools, okay? So we can check everything. We've got the services, and then we've got the prompt section. So role, current time, task, specifics, context, examples. Really, really good prompt. Recommended agent settings, which is going to be Australian voice. It's even got the speed, the temperature, the back channeling words. So we can see how we can customize it as well. Claude can do this all automatically. It's then going to create the prompt and everything. So what we're going to do with Claude right here, which is what I forgot to mention initially, is we're going to say, hey, Claude, the plan looks really good. However, you must use Retail's API to create this automatically, please. Here is my API key. So ideally, we should have said this at the start, but I just wanted to kind of show you the capabilities of what it's going to do in terms of the plan mode and how when you use the plan mode, you can actually interrupt it, accept this plan and not accept this plan, right? So when you're first creating out your agents, you can use this plan mode, right, to see what it's actually going to create rather than just doing it all automatically with the automatic feature inside Claude Code. Because if it goes ahead and creates everything, uses API keys, then you've got to go back and delete it. So having this plan mode is really, really crucial, so you can actually review it before it does create it. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to give it our API key so it can automatically create everything. Ideally, you would say this in the first sentence, but I wanted to show you how we'll use the plan mode. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to come back and you're going to come into Retail AI. And then you come into Settings, API Keys, add an API key, and it's going to be a normal API key, a public API key. And then it's going to do, we'll just do Claude Code, okay? Claude Code create. And that's going to be our API key. We're going to copy that, come back and put it in here. And then we're going to send that off, okay? So you can see, got it. I'll update this plan to use Retail API to create the LLM and agent automatically using the API key. Awesome. So that's what we want to do automatically. So of course, if you did this all in one sentence, it would already know what to do. Plus, if you have it out of plan mode as well, this is going to happen automatically. But we can see now it's starting to plan out everything. So we can see, do you have a preferred voice ID for an Australian voice, or should I use a default 11 Labs voice? We can just say pick the default for now, right? Of course, if you don't have this plan mode, it's not going to ask as many questions as well. It'll be more automatic. But if you want maximum controllability and maximum customization, then we can say accept this plan, right? We can see save the prompt file, sure. Create the agent using the API, awesome. The tool URLs will be placed as placeholders for now, right? Since NNN workflows are being built in a future request. Okay, yes, and auto accept. So now what we're going to do in our next workflow is we're going to build the NNN workflows and it's going to update those URL placeholders. Okay, you can see it's got all of our customization in there. And then it's going to update the tools. So it's going to create Retail LLM with Emily's prompt and tools via API. So again, it's using the create voice agent. And when it's doing that, it is creating the tools also, right? So if you want, you can make the agent create the prompt and the tools at the moment. But as I said before, it's best if we do it one by one in those 3 stages, where it's like we'll create the prompt in Retail, we create the workflows in NNN, and then we test everything, okay? But depending on how you want to do it, it's fine. You can have a play around with it. But yeah, we can see what it's going to be doing at the moment. It's going to be using our API key. It's going to be creating some code. I believe it's going to be Python to execute those scripts and execute everything to actually go ahead and, interact within the API. So we can see right here, allow this bash command. Sure. What we're going to do now is we'll switch it to bypass permission just so it's a little bit faster. Again, I'll just sit here with you guys going through Claude. This process usually takes, if you have everything, within one sentence, it usually takes probably about a few minutes, to be honest, depending on your computer and everything. But again, much, much easier than us going into Retail, picking the voice, doing everything. Of course, it's very good to understand those systems, but this process essentially allows us to do it automatically inside Claude Code. So, okay, so we can see checking the available voices. So again, using those API documentations that we have, right? And it's going to look for an Australian voice. So searching for Australian voices inside Retail. Right, it's found one. See, it's finding a few. You can see actually all of the commands up here that it is using. It's using bash commands to go ahead and execute all the JSONs and all the curl files. So it can actually look. So you can see, but the custom Rachel voice fits perfectly, right, with the agent. So it's going to use that. So agent created sexually. Now let me save the prompt to this file for reference. So again, if you want, you can get the agent to save the prompt. You know, you could have said like, look, I don't really need the Bright Smiles prompt to be fair. And it will go ahead and delete it, but I'll just keep it in there for now because that's what the agent wants to do. Okay. So it's coming through and generating everything. It's going to soon save it in there, and then we'll be able to actually look at the prompt, make sure it's followed all of our workflows within inside retail right here. If we come down, we should see, here we go. So we can see that it's got our example prompt, example time zones right here. So it's going to refer to this when it's constantly creating the agent, right? So awesome. We've got the prompt MD inside there, and you guys can delete this if you really don't want it, but we can see, we come in the prompt, we can see everything about our agent. So we've got the agent ID, we've got the LLM ID, we've got the voice. Here's some of the agent configuration. So I've got voice speed, voice temperature, right? Back channeling words even. So you can see how, as you know, as much information as you give it inside the prompt, it's going to customize this voice automatically. Beforehand, we have to go in manually and change all these things, but now Claude Code can do everything automatically. So we've got the general prompt right here. It looks pretty good. Again, we'll hop in retail and figure it out. Then we've also got the tools right there. So you can see now if we come back over to retail, we come back to our agents, bang, we can see that our agent has been created successfully. How cool is that? And awesome, it's got a perfect prompt in here if we take a look at it. So we've got the role. Again, you guys know this structure by now if you've watched some of my videos, but again, you are Emily, the friendly and professional virtual receptionist for Bright Smiles Dental, general clinic located in Melbourne, Australia. You answer phone calls from patients and help them check available appointment slots. Current time in here, right? My time zone is actually Brisbane, guys, because I'm in Brisbane, but I just said Melbourne, but as you can see, the agent got it right. I can just change it. Tasks, beautiful. So again, follow these steps in order to go ahead and handle the call. Here's your task. Step 1, greet the caller warmly. Step 2, identify what the caller needs. So listen to and understand whether they want to check availability, book an appointment, or have a general question. If they have a general question outside of booking, politely let them know you can help them with appointment bookings and suggest you speak with the clinic directly for inquiries. So again, we probably should have provided a little bit more context on how to actually go ahead and answer these questions. And I'll show you how in Claude we can actually do that. We'll get it to add a knowledge base automatically, right? But I want to leave that for kind of like the last build because that's where we'll really go in depth of like customizing call settings, right? Customizing our post hook webhooks as well and getting an end to build out everything. We'll really dive deep into building out all of this. And we're even going to build out a conversational flow agent, which is where we use retail and we look at the available nodes and everything and design a conversational flow agent. But you can see this is just a basic agent. So you can just kind of understand how the process works. And it's going to set you up for success when you're building our outbound agent and everything else. Okay. So we've got step 3. Awesome. Collect the necessary details. So before checking availability, ask for their preferred date, right? Or a few dates that work for them. That's pretty good. What appointment type they would need. And then their full name as well. Okay. Now, one thing here. Okay. Yep. It's even got the tool name. Awesome. So once you have the preferred date, call the check availability tool. Yeah, I'm going to just put some quotations, but you can see the prompt is pretty much literally perfect. And then while waiting, say something like, let me just check what we've got, available in that day for you, right? Present time slots. So share the available time slots with the caller. So again, it's using that chain of thought prompting, which is really effective in prompting our agents, using it by step. Share the available time slots with the caller. I've got a few points for you on Tuesday. If there's nothing at 9:30 in the morning, 11 o'clock, or 2 in the afternoon, which one works best for you? Awesome. Although I would like to see, obviously, a little bit more markdown format. I think that's something that I will definitely add. But again, that's just a prompt example. If we tell the agent how to prompt everything step by step using markdown format, it's going to do it. So you kind of guys get the gist of it. The more context you give to Claude, the more examples you give to Claude, the more specific you are with your prompts, the more details you provide, the better the output's going to be. This is just a very basic way, but you can see how powerful this is. Step 6, book the appointment. So once the caller selects the time, it's called the book appointment tool. Awesome. That makes good. That's all making sense with the date, time, custom name, and service type. And then we'll even check the functions for now. You can see it's just got a default value, but if we come to the form right here, it's got everything filled in all automatically, which is super good, right? Confirm the booking. So after the tool returns success, confirm all the details back to the caller, which is the date, type of appointment, any preparations. And step 8 is going to be wrapping up the call. If there's anything else that you can help them with, if not, end the call warmly by saying something like this, right? And then also something that I'll put in here and say, use the, actually, then we'll just do, after you have said, and underscore call. And we can just do end call. Right there. Again, we can add that into the prompt really easily, but you can see it's got in our chain of thought prompting process, it's got in everything that we've got from the example prompting thing. It's got our specifics. So again, speak naturally, right? You can see using Australian phrasing. Awesome. Keep a warm, friendly, and professional tone throughout the call. Pace your speech naturally, use back channeling. So again, this is just specifics on how to conduct the conversation. Got a little bit of context about the business. Awesome. And then, of course, we have our example scenario, which is all generated by AI. Don't need to do this. And then we've got our tools. So we've got check availability, book an appointment. Awesome. And then we've got our notes. So again, just notes summing up the agent right here. Okay, so you can see that's everything in terms of our system prompt. Now we can see it's customized and it's gone through the customized. We can see inside our agent, it's got the, here we go, model. So we can see the model, it's selected the model, we can customize the model, silence, timeout, max call duration, all these things we can customize. We'll be going a little bit more in depth in the last build that we do inside this course. But we can see everything is really customized, okay? And then we've got our voice. So it's found the voice, which is Rachel. And then it's even selected Australian English right here to get Pacific. So again, depending on what you prompt it, it's going to obviously go ahead and customize that as well. So customize the voice from 11 Labs. It's used a custom voice at the moment. So I'll search all the voices. And then if we go into the voice model, it's customized the voice temperature, right? To be a little bit more calm, a little bit more reassuring, and down to 0.7. The voice speed has stayed the same. The voice volume is also at the same. As you can see, evident by all these agent configurations and the documentation right here. Okay. So you can see that's pretty good. And then, of course, it's got our values up the top. It's got our cost per minute. It's around 10 cents per minute. Really good. Latency, right? A little high, to be honest, but that's fine. Then we've got our tokens up the top, which we don't need to worry about. It hasn't really touched that. So that's everything in terms of the configuration. Of course, you can really customize these agents. You can tell it anything you want. And as long as it is within the API documentation, then it's going to be fine. Okay. Then it's got our functions as well. Now, obviously, these functions are not yet done because what we're going to need is we're going to need our API endpoint, which is going to be our webhook from the next, essentially, the next part of, end-to-end design, which is what I ran you through, I believe, with, a little bit earlier in this course of how to install end-to-end. Okay. So we got our API endpoint right here, which is going to be obviously our end-to-end webhook trigger. But again, it's configured the name. Again, really important that the name is the same inside the prompt, which it has done that. Okay. And then it's gone in the description. So check available 30-minute appointment slots on the calendar for a given date at Bright Smiles Dental, and it will return a list of available time slots. Okay. API endpoint. So we can see we've got our API endpoint inside here, which is going to be, obviously this is fake for now. Timeout, blah, blah, blah. And then it's got our parameters, which is our form as well, which is just got our date to check availability, right? And it's got our year format, okay? So what we're going to make sure, and this is the reason why we split it up, is within this detail, right? It's going to be sending it in this date format. So what we need to get Claude to do, and what we normally do with real voice agents in building these scenarios, is we need to make sure this date via webhook is compatible for our end-to-end workflow to then check availability, right? So we're just going to be using a Google Calendar node just to kind of get your head around everything. But we really need to make sure that Claude understands that, okay, this date that is going to get received, it needs to be compatible within our end-to-end workflow, okay? And it needs to have a prompt that is compatible. It can't just be, willy-nilly, right? So that's why we need to split these things up and be, really specific, right? But again, this can all be optimized, right? As you build more of these, you can optimize the MDs, you can optimize all the system prompts, you can optimize everything for voice agent specifically. But this is going to be a factor, obviously, just to prompt Claude to make sure, okay, the detail that you get from the parameter inside the function, it needs to be compatible with your end-to-end workflow. It needs to work, okay? So again, that's going to be the tools it created. And then we can see also the book appointment one, right? Exact same thing. We'll get our name. We've got our description. So book a 30-minute appointment at Bright Smile Center for the given date, time, patient name, and service type. We've got our fake endpoint at the moment, right? Which will then update later once we've built the end-to-end workflows. Then our form right here, awesome. It's got our date, service type, the time, the customer name, and then also the detail right here as well. So appointment date in that year format. Again, probably best in the prompt to customize it, right? To say, put it in conversational format, right? But it really depends on the type of system you're going to use, okay? You can see we've got the time, customer name, etc. So look, everything looks really, really good. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the next stage of our agent, which is going to be creating some of the workflows. Next step that we're going to do is creating our check availability and book appointment workflows. So again, you can just prompt Claude whatever workflow you need. The more specific, the more detail you provide to Claude, the better. Okay, so I'm going to say something like this. Hey Claude, I now want you to create the check availability workflow and the book appointment workflow inside N8N using my N8N API and the MCP and the skills you have access to. The workflow will start with a webhook trigger, and then it will go to an AI agent, okay? And make sure that the values and the data that you receive from the retail functions and the parameters are accurately mapped inside the AI agent to then interact within the Google Calendar node that it will be attached to with inside the AI agent, okay? Also, make sure you're using GPT 4.1 as the LLM model, and then you have a webhook response to then respond back to retail, okay? And then I want you to do the same thing for book an appointment. Use a webhook trigger, okay? And that URL, remember, is going to go inside the LLM, okay, to then trigger everything. And then also make sure that all the variables and parameters that you have in the book appointment function inside retail is correctly mapped to the Google Calendar to appear in the description as well. And then from there, go ahead and create your webhook response as well. Again, Claude, it's really important that you make sure you map the variables from retail that you have built, okay? And you make sure they work inside the N8N workflow, and the calendar and everything works as well. Thanks. So you can see that was a pretty long prompt that we have right there. But you can see the more detail that you go, the better, okay? So we're just going to go ahead and send that off. And again, guys, as Claude builds more of these, it's going to learn more and more because it has context to all these other conversations that we have, right? So now what Claude's going to do is something very similar to what I showed you earlier when we were building N8N and stuff. And this is going to go ahead and research N8N. As you can see, it's going through our process to search up all the nodes that we need for the agent, for the webhook, only everything that it needs. So we can see, probably best to put it on plan mode here, just so we can see what it's going to plan out, right? So it's going to research N8N nodes, what it needs, build the check availability one, build the book appointment, and then update the LLM as well, okay? So we can see it's just thinking, right? I've got all the research now. Let me write the comprehensive plan now. So again, I've got it on plan mode just so you can really see what Claude Code is doing inside these workflows, understand. As I said before, it's very important that you understand what it's building, how these workflows actually work as well. So you can see it's going to write the comprehensive plan. So again, it should pop up in a few minutes. Okay, so since we've got it in plan mode, we can see the plan that it's got. So if we come all the way up to the top, you can see all the plans for the workflows, right? So again, the retail agent Emily for Bright Smile Centers has two custom tools, a check availability and a book appointment. The current point is to, they currently point to a placeholder webhook URLs, right? We need to build two N8N workflows, one for each tool, so that Emily, when Emily calls these functions, the webhooks trigger, N8N interacts within Google Calendar and responds back to retail. So we can see it's got everything, the LLM ID, the agent ID. Then what retail sends is going to be a tool, which is going to be this. And then for the book appointment, so we can see it understands the date, it understands everything, right? But we just really need to make sure that it maps it in, right? Which is what I told it to do, okay? And this is going to be the architecture for the check availability, right? So we've got the node, which understands. We've got the agent, right? And then we also have the agent prompt right here. And we can see that it has got that JSON argument date. So it's going to correctly map everything in, which is what we have to do manually, okay? And then from there, it's got Monday to Friday. We probably should change the time zone to Brisbane, but that's fine. We can go and do it after. I just said it was in Melbourne for now. But we can see all of that's correct. Okay, we've got the response to webhook node, and then connections, and it's going to be virtually the same for the book appointment. So you can see this is pretty smart, Claude, in this technology. So we can see everything is pretty good after both workflows have been created. We have the webhook URL. I'll update the retail LLM tools, perfect, which is what we wanted to do. Create the workflow, create workflow 2, validate, auto fix if anything is, making wrong. And this is another key point that I want to mention is because we installed those skills earlier, Claude Code itself is able to fix any errors that it comes apart. So it can actually debug these workflows. It can automatically fix any errors that it is run to. And hopefully we get to see that a little bit later when we're building more advanced workflows as well. So we've got update the retail LLM tool ID. And then from there, manual steps required for deployment, right? We're going to actually have to go and connect our Google Calendar, select everything, activate both workflows, which is fine. Okay. So yeah, this plan looks all good. So we'll do yes and auto accept, and then we'll just switch to bypass permissions for now. Okay. Also, another thing that you guys might want to do is if you don't need any of these conversations right here, you can delete it because this is using up Claude's context window. It only has, I believe, 200,000 or 300,000 tokens of context to get access to. So when you're creating these agents, make sure to delete any agents that you've created, or alternatively, what you can do is you can do /compact, right? Which essentially compacts your conversations into a summary. So you can still have the conversation there, but you just have a summary of Claude, right? So it just shortens down the conversation a little bit, okay? So we've got right here updating the tools. So again, build the book appointment workflow inside N8N, right? It's building everything. Okay, it's validating both workflows and then it's updating. So you can see really good work by Claude here. It's doing everything. So essentially the workflows are, essentially unlimited that it can build. It can build anything inside N8N. Therefore, you can literally build any workflow for any industry, okay? But what's going to be really valuable is what I'll show you a little bit later, which is interacting within different CRMs, different softwares, different APIs, which is really the big manual point personally from designing these AI agents is you have to understand each CRM. You have to understand how each API interacts with each other. You have to understand a lot of things for these voice agents. So you'll see how Claude is able to understand all these complex things. And if it comes into these errors, it has all the capabilities to fix it. It has our N8N MCP. It has all of our N8N skills, just like we would. It's probably better than us building it. So you can just go ahead and debug everything and fix everything, okay? So we can see it's going to update the retail LLM ID. It's got our webhook right there, which is awesome, but we're going to need to activate these URLs a little bit later. Okay, so again, retail LLM updated with the actual N8N webhook. Let me also reference the file and mark everything complete. So again, really cool stuff. Like we're literally not having to touch anything. You go back in my previous videos all the way down, you can actually see all of the manual stuff that we had to build before this technology even exists. It took us a while, so it just shows where this technology is heading as well. It's just going to become easier for us to ship these things. It's going to become easier for us to build these for clients. The development time is going to cut down drastically. It's going to be easy to test. It's going to be so easy for us to build these things and give our clients results. So we can see what was built. Okay, so N8N workflow was built. N8N workflow 2 was built. The LLM is updated, right? And there's just a few manual steps. So the Google Auth nodes, the correct calendar, all of these things as well. Okay, so we've got our We got our workflows in here. So we can see the updated workflows. So we come in and look at the check availability workflow. Awesome. So we can see that's really beautiful. Okay. So now let's have a look at everything. So we've got our test URL. Awesome. Okay. We've got our agent right here using the expression. Okay. That's going to be the prompt user message. So again, check the Google Calendar for the available 30-minute appointment, right? Using that. Okay. And then we've got the system message as well. You're a scheduling system for Bright Smiles Dental. So now what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly make sure we've got all these things created. I'm going to go ahead and create a new credential. I'm going to sign in with my Google Calendar. Okay, right here, because that's what we need to do. Of course, this is going to be a manual process. There's definitely ways for it to be automatic in terms of the credentials. But we can see, got our calendar account right there. Okay, and we're just going to leave it, right? And we'll put this as Brisbane for now. A little slow. Okay, awesome. So, seems pretty good. And then respond to retail. So we're just going to leave it for now. We're going to get the agent to test it and see if there's any errors. We're also going to publish it as well. So if we come back to our agent, set the correct calendar, open our credentials, activate both workflows. So again, we've done that. We're just going to do it for the book appointment one. Okay. Awesome. And then we will do the book appointment one. All of our workflows. Just going to go ahead and erase this with Brisbane. Just replace all of this for now because that is actually my time zone. So I don't know why I said Melbourne. I probably should have said Brisbane. And we'll also replace this with Brisbane. Awesome. Okay. That's all good. Okay, the system prompt looks pretty good. Got our Google Calendar. We'll just make sure we connect up everything. And we're just going to make sure this is Brisbane. So again, it's got the configurations for the nodes right here. Just double checking. We've just changed everything to Brisbane. Obviously, it's my fault that I didn't do that. But yeah, okay, sweet. That's all good. Let's go ahead and publish that. And then one more thing that I forgot to do is just come into our check availability workflow and just make sure this says Brisbane. Yep, no more slots there. Okay. Just changing these things over real quick. Sorry about this. I didn't actually realize when I was saying it inside the prompt that obviously it's not going to work if I don't put it for my times and then I'm actually in. But yeah, okay. That's all good. Okay, so we've got everything published right here. So we come back to our Claude agent. Again, we're not even where, I mean, I can just show you inside retail. But again, you don't realistically, you don't have to touch this, right? But I'm just showing you what it's created. So come to the functions right here. We can see that it's now got our webhook in there, which is what we want. Okay. Got it both in there for check availability and book the appointment, which is awesome. Just make sure you publish it. Okay. So we can see, then we're going to have to sign a phone number and test it with retail using a test call. But now for the agent, what we're going to do is now we're going to activate the testing phase. So for retail, we can actually get retail to test it using the chat function. So we'll say something like this. Hey, Claude, now what I want you to do is I want you to test the agent using the inbuilt chat function via API. So just have a conversation with your agent and test it out, right? So for example, ask for an available appointment slot, okay? And book the appointment and go through a normal conversation, example conversation, okay? If you run into any errors, make sure you fix them automatically inside N8N. Make sure to use your knowledge of N8N MCP, use your knowledge of N8N itself, and really make sure this agent is working before we deploy it and publish it. So again, what we're going to do is change this right here, and we'll just make it to plan mode as well if we just go and send that. So now we're moving on to our third stage, which is essentially testing agents. Now, to be honest, when, as someone who's built these 4 businesses, right, development is often the easy part. It's actually testing it in live sandboxes, live environments, and live, scenarios for the business. So, and Claude Code can do that through APIs, but until we actually get the data that we need from the business, it's very difficult. But Claude Code can absolutely test everything. It can test the workflows. It can run out everything, which is what it's going to do right here. So you can see it's gotten both the workflows. But again, until we really get that main testing data from the client, it's going to be hard to do it automatically, obviously, without having it, right? But once we do that, we can do it automatically, right? So see, we've got the plan right here. Test via retail chat API. Awesome. So by the web call. Test the N8N webhooks directly. Check execution logs. Awesome. So we can see that's like all done. Beforehand, we actually had to go in and look at the agent. We had to obviously go into the chat or something, type everything out one by one, figure everything, book all the appointments. So again, this is really valuable stuff for us. And we will just switch it on to bypass permissions for now. Okay. So you can see via the plan, it's really, really cool, right? It's going to fix any issues. If there's any expression errors, connection issues, retail errors, anything with inside N8N, anything, it's able to update it because it does have the documentation. It has the context. It has everything necessary that we need to go ahead and build it. So we can see that this is super cool. Okay. So we can see both webhooks return 200 with a valid JSON. Everything's working. So again, using the tool, so test, check availability, test, book appointment, review N8N execution logs and fix any errors, then test retail AI via an agent webhook call. So again, you should be able to get an understanding of actually what we're doing. This is, again, going to the third stage right here, which is testing the agent. We'll build out the prompt. We'll build out all the N8N workflows, and we've done everything. You can see Claude might have to auto-compact soon for the context. We can see the check availability is working. HTTP with a valid JSON. Right, it's going to test the book appointment one now. Again, this is so cool. Like we don't, like beforehand we had to do this automatically, which is, sorry, manually, sorry. Now it can be done automatically, which is really, really good for us. Again, as I said before, it's going to cut down this development time that we usually have with these voice agents. It's going to make it so much easier for us to ship these and get so much better results with AI. Okay, now let me test the full retail agent via webhook API. So again, it's now going to test it using retail's API. Let's get our bearer key there, of course. We'll just see what results it does. Again, I'm just going to do this live, just all recorded so you guys can see really what this process, looks like. So yeah, essentially, everything is like you can create any agent, you can create any workflow, right? Now, as I said before, now that we have the necessary MCP, we have all the documentation inside N8N. It can create virtually any N8N workflow. It can create any voice agent. It can literally create anything. So the possibilities are endless in terms of the scope of the agent. Obviously, the more advanced it is, the more prone to breaking it's going to be. But the potential's there with Claude. So we can literally build anything. We can build canceling, rescheduling, which is what I'm going to do later in more of the advanced builds. But I'm going to be taking you through an outbound build as well. But yeah, essentially all you have to do is just describe it to Claude, right? Use the 3-part process that I told you. Build out the prompt, build out the workflows, and then test it. And that's what you need to do, okay? This is the best method that I found with really building these agents right here. And we can see all 4 executions are done, 0 errors, everything's clean, the testing is complete, all systems go. So you can see it literally did that while I was talking to you, which is super cool. It's got even the test results here, guys. Look, check availability. We've got more statuses, response time even, details, book appointments. So again, this is automatic testing done by Claude using their API. All fields mapped. The book appointments, James, you can see. I even got a notification that the appointment has been booked, and we can go in there a little bit easier. The issue found. So the problem, GPT 4.1 is not allowed with N8N's credits. So again, switch to 4.0 mini. You can see how it's able to look at issues and figure out workarounds to it, okay? So switch with both workflows, GPT 4.0 mini works with N8N AI credentials. GPT 4.1, right? So we're gonna have to add our own API key right here. That's because I don't think I've got my API key with inside N8N. But again, we can just update it if we want to use 4.1, and we can see what's verified. So retail to N8N, webhook data is mapping and it works correctly. We can see inside the arguments. The AI agent processes the request and returns a valid JSON. All retail parameters are correct and flow accurately. Webhook response is compatible with retail. Awesome. Retail's agent configuration is valid. A webhook call read successfully. Okay, we can see the Google authentications, is just needs to get configured to get real calendar data, and then select the correct calendar as well, and we can give it a test as well, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, so that's essentially our first build, all using Claude Code. Again, we barely touched any nodes. I just went over it with you guys, checked everything, and then I also obviously went through some of the configurations and stuff. So if we have a look now at the results, let's see. So I'm into N8N. I'm going to come back out and refresh everything. So let's go into our check availability. We can see our execution. So again, you guys saw live, I did not touch any of this. This is all done by Claude. We can see, boom, right there. Like, how amazing is that? Beforehand, like as I said before, if you guys been watching my videos on building these agents, I built a ton of these agents manually, and we've finally figured out a way to actually go ahead and do this automatically by Claude. So we can see the webhook right here. This was from our retail, right? You can see from number to number inbound, okay? You can see everything. It's gone ahead and checked availability. You can see it's got the correct date. Everything is in there. Okay. System message. Okay. And then we've even got the calendar as well, right? We come out to our editor, and we'll check the book appointment one, check our executions, and bang, it's green. So what I'm going to do just to make sure, and we're going to come back to our agent name, and we're going to test everything and test if it works. So let's go ahead and give it a test.
Hi there. Thanks for calling Bright Smiles Dental. This is Emily speaking. How can I help you today?
Hey Emily, look, I'd just like to book in a appointment, please.
Of course, I'd be happy to help you with that. Do you have a particular day in mind for your appointment, or are there a few dates that would work for you? And what type of appointment are you after, like a checkup, cleaning, filling, or something else?
Yeah, just be for a general checkup. I was wondering if you had any availability tomorrow at 2 p.m.
Thanks for that. And could I please grab your full name just so I can check the schedule and hold the spot for you? I'll have a look at what's available for a general checkup tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, my name's just Ashton Voss.
Let me just check what we have available tomorrow for you at 2 in the afternoon. Thanks for waiting, Ashton. It looks like we're actually fully booked at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Would you like me to check for other times tomorrow, or perhaps look at another day that might suit you?
Yeah, what other days, what other times do you have within the next few days?
No worries at all, Ashton. I'll check what's available over the next few days for a general checkup and let you know the options. Is there a particular day you'd prefer, or should I just look at the next available slots from tomorrow onwards?
Yeah, just do that, yeah.
Let me check what we have available for you on Thursday. Alright, Ashton, here are the next available slots for a checkup. Thursday, we have a spot at 10 o'clock in the morning. Friday, there's an opening at 2:30 in the afternoon. Would either of those work for you, or would you like me to check further ahead?
Yeah, let's do Thursday at 10 o'clock, please. That works.
Lovely, let me lock that in for you now. You're all booked in, Ashton. That's a general checkup on Thursday, the 19th of February at 10 o'clock in the morning. If you're a new patient, just arrive about.
Awesome. So you can see how cool is that? So we literally didn't do anything. Like we literally didn't need to create any of the workflows inside N8N. Again, I just double checked it. But if I look, we can see my Google Calendar actually is in there. So first one, if we come in, so we can see with my Google Calendar, that's the checkup for me that we had right in there. So from the agent, so we can see it's even got the description, it's got the appointment, it's got everything in there, and that's done all automatically, guys, via Claude Code. So how cool is that? So now that you understand, obviously we've been through a decent amount, we've installed the necessary systems, we've gone through N8M, we've gone through the skills, we've installed Retail AI's API, we've done everything. We've tested the agent and we built our very first agent using Claude Code automatically. So with that being said, now let's move on to the next type of agent, which is what I want to run you through, Claude Code, which is going to be an outbound agent. So I'll see you there. Okay, now let's move on to our next agent, which is going to be an outbound agent that we're going to build with Claude Code. So these are some of the most valuable agents that, myself as an agency owner that builds these and develops these for businesses has seen. So this is going to be a very important section. We're going to be covering a general use case for an outbound agent. First of all, we're going to have, essentially 4 N8N workflows. We're going to have one workflow that's going to come off a form. So when I mean outbound agent, it could either mean a website form that comes off a website. It could be an ad. So essentially anything to where the customer is coming to you, giving your consent to contact them. And then we have an agent immediately call them and contact them. So essentially a speed to lead system. And from there, the agent will try and do whatever goal it needs. So whether that's book an appointment, qualify the lead, whatever scenario the business is in, it's going to try and do that. So that's essentially going to be our agent. So we're going to have our first workflow, then we're going to have 2 workflows, check availability, book appointments, and then we're going to have our last workflow, which is essentially analyzing the call with inside retail. So setting up a post-call analysis inside retail or using Claude Code. And then from there, it's going to update a Google Sheet, okay? And it's going to have the lead information, it's going to have the status of the lead, etc. Okay? So let's go ahead and get started. So this is going to be quite a lengthy build in terms of our outbound agent, but Claude Code can all do it quite well and quite efficiently. So the first thing that we're going to do following our, if we come to our retail, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to ask it to design the agent. So this agent is going to need a few things. It's going to need the necessary dynamic variables to pull in from the form. We're going to be using an N8N form to trigger the outbound call. Then it's going to need the book appointment tool, check availability tool, and then it's also going to have a post-call analysis as well. But we don't really need to put that inside this first prompt because that's going to be something that happens after we essentially design the agent itself and all the workflows, okay? So that'll happen in the second stage, and then we'll go ahead and test it and do everything like that. So in Claude Code, I'm going to say something like this. Hey Claude, I want you to build an outbound AI agent for a real estate company called Alex in a American voice, with a natural, professional sounding tone. The agent is going to initiate a outbound call via N8N using Retail's API outbound call. It's going to, and you need to make sure that the agent has correctly mapped in the dynamic variables such as name, email, phone number, and type of property inquiring, for example. Okay. And then from there, the agent must qualify the lead, and then it will check slots inside a system, calendar system. Then it will book appointments. Okay. And then that's essentially going to be the agent. Okay. Do not design the N8N workflows yet. Only design the retail agent at the moment, and just wait until we design the N8N workflows, configure the outbound calls. So we can say something like that. And then also something I forgot to say is the time zone will be Australia, Brisbane. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and send that off. Again, should have everything, right? Make sure it has the dynamic variables. And then we'll also just put here, use the retail API and make sure you note and reference the correct dynamic variables. And then we can say which you will design later in end-to-end. Again, as I said before, we're going to switch this to plan mode as well, just so we can show you everything. So as I said before, the more detail you give to Claude, and the better you structure it, the more context you get, the better the outputs you're going to get for the agent. So as you can see, the possibilities are kind of limitless because we do have access to the API through end-to-end. We have access to all the nodes. We have access to retail AI. We literally have endless possibilities of what these agents, can build. As long as we give it enough context and we describe it very clearly, it should be all fine. Okay. So as I said before, something very similar to our inbound agent, but all that's going to be different is it's just going to be obviously creating the agent. And then it's also going to have in our dynamic variables, which is going to be mapped from our outbound call, or it's going to be mapped from the form that we configure in end-to-end, which of course Claude Code will be designing. But we're just designing the agent at the moment, doing it one by one, step-by-step process. And then from there in Claude, we'll get it to build all of the workflows and map in all of the tools as well. Okay. So again, we're going to be using four workflows, four individual workflows inside this. So you can see agent, super good, right? It's got all the dynamic variables, perfect, right? Property type. Okay. Come up to the plan. Awesome. We got the prompt in there. So again, by switching this to plan mode, we can see what it's accepting. And then, as you guys know before, I've mentioned this a lot of times, to switch it to automatic if you want it to be all automatic. You don't want to plan. But again, I recommend the plan so you can see it. So we can see it's just made up some qualifying questions. Again, offer to book a consultation. Awesome. Got the tools in there. Book appointment. Awesome. Specifics. Yeah, awesome. Okay. So just looking through, generally pretty good. Property type, okay. I'm just making sure it's mapped in all of the variables. It's got the name, phone. Yep, okay, that's fine. Again, I'm just making sure it's referenced to dynamic variables inside the prompt, which it has done, so it can actually explain it to the customer. It's got the current time as well, which is good. And then outbound payload, awesome. Awesome tools, check availability. Yeah, so super good. As you can see, that was really quick, guys. So that's awesome. We got that plan, and then create the agent, assign the phone number. Comes next. We'll design the end workflows. Yep. So you can see it's got everything. So we're gonna go ahead and accept that. And as you know, Claude knows that it's not going to design the workflows yet. You guys can play around with this if you want to build the end-to-end workflows when you are also doing the prompt. But I've just found obviously just the best results is from here. So we can see it's just going to save that design to our project. Again, you can have this optional. It's not really necessary, but it's good to keep in the context window of Claude. All your agents that you have created and everything is kind of like something that you can just keep in for all your agents and all your MD files. But again, if you have too much of these, it's going to override, and the outputs from Claude is not going to be as good because it has too much context in it. Okay. So we can see the agent design is everything. Plan design, variables. Okay. Okay. And I'm not sure if it's created it inside retail. Please create the agent in retail using my API key. Again, I probably should have mentioned that within the first part, but you've seen in the previous workflows. Okay, so you can see it's going to get our retail API key. Okay, so we're going to be doing the exact same thing just to get our API key settings. And guys, if you also want, you could actually save your credentials and your API key inside an MD file and tell Claude to get that and access that so you don't have to do it every single time. Okay. But we'll just get this one and we'll come in. Key. Okay. So again, this is all automatic. Just make sure to mention that beforehand. And yeah, it's going to be quite easily create all the prompts, create everything. So again, I'm trying to just do this as raw as possible, just so you can see how we can actually design this and build out everything and what Claude's doing step by step. But again, this is just so much easier than doing it manually without having to know how to build all these systems, you know? So we can see it's just creating the tools at the moment. Right. All right, let's switch it back on to bypass permissions. You can see it's got all of the LLM. It just created the agent. Now it's configuring the voice. Right. So again, you guys should know everything by now, like kind of getting the swing of it if you did watch the previous build, how we do it step by step. So as long as you follow that step-by-step processes, 1, creating the agent, 2, creating the end-to-end workflows, connecting it to the agent, and then 3, testing it, you can literally build any type of agent, essentially, inside Claude Code. Like, the possibilities is really limitless. Okay, so we can see that everything has been bought, so, or created. Come to the agents, we can see Alex, outbound agent, and we'll have our perfect prompt in here. We've got dynamic variables. Okay, everything's super, super good inside here. And then it also does have the book appointment one, okay? All the book appointment workflows. Awesome. Check availability, just double checking everything. Awesome, okay. So that's super good. Now, that was pretty much instant. We're going to come back to Claude, and we're going to now design the end-to-end workflow. So remember, we need 4. We need 1 to initiate the outbound call, 2 to check availability and book appointments, and then the last one is going to be a post-call analysis to analyze the call and then update the Google Sheet. So we're going to essentially describe that in as much detail as possible with Claude Code. So let's do it. Okay, Claude. So I want you to create 4 N8N workflows. The first workflow is going to be our trigger for our outbound call. So firstly, I want you to create an N8N native form. So every time an N8N form is submitted with the name, email, phone number, property type, that will then trigger a outbound call via the retail create a phone call API. Ensure that you configure that inside N8N, please, with the necessary credentials. And then that will then trigger our call for our agent. Okay. And then from there, I want you to create 2 appointment booking workflows. One will be a check availability. So again, you'll have your webhook trigger coming from Retail AI. You'll have your AI agent, and you will ensure you correctly map the variables and data from retail. You'll have the LLM, which is going to be GBT 4.0 mini. Okay. And then you'll have the Google Calendar node to check availability. Then you'll have your webhook response. And then you'll have something very similar for the book appointment. So you have your webhook trigger, you'll have your AI agent with all the correctly mapped data and variables from retail, from your functions. You'll have your LLM, which is going to be 4.0 mini, and then you'll have your book appointment Google Calendar node, and then you'll have your response webhook. And then finally, the last N8N workflow I want you to create is a post-call analysis. So you will essentially have your webhook trigger, okay? And then from there, using all of the variables and post-call analysis variables you have created inside retail using the post-call webhook function inside retail after a call is finished, you'll then update a Google Sheet with the customer's name, the customer's email, phone number, property type, and outcome of the call, for example. So ensure you correctly configure everything from retail and N8N so it can interact smoothly, and just make sure you connect all the webhooks and the functions as well. So you can see it provided a decent amount of detail. I'm going to go ahead and send that off right there. Okay. So again, the more detail you provide, the better the output is. But of course, the agent, this agent and Claude Code is very, very powerful. So it's going to learn off its mistakes and it's going to learn, if you say things wrong, right? So for example, if you didn't give as much detail, Claude Code is still able to go ahead and build literally all of these things. It's just going to run into more errors. You might have to give it a little bit more context. So again, let me just put this. I'm just on. This is on bypass permissions now. I probably should have switched it to plan. But you can see generally pretty fine based on all of our plans. We really haven't had to change anything. But you can see it's updating tools. So it's got workflow one, outbound call trigger. So form. It's also got our NAD native form, check availability, book appointment, and then post call analysis, and then update the agent with all the URLs. So we can see that's what it's got planned, and the workflows are just going to get built live as we speak now. So I'll probably cut back to when everything is built, just because obviously these are 4 large workflows that I'm building, so it might take a while. I don't want to stay here for too long. But you can see generally the agent is obviously creating all the workflows through the MCP. But yeah, I'll cut back to when everything is created. Okay, so we can see it's probably been about 2 minutes ish, and everything is created. So it's done quite a lot. 4 end-to-end workflows created. Outbound call trigger, just like we did. Check availability, book appointments, post call analysis. And a key thing about Claude Code is the more agents you build, the more workflows you build, the better it is. It's just going to keep learning and learning and learning because it's already previously done this, right? So we can see all 7 post hook call analysis variables with the summary, sentiment, success, time span, transcript. That is also done in the post call analysis. So now let's have a look in the agent. Now we can see there's a few things that we need to do, and that's essentially just connecting everything, right? So again, that won't take long. We just need to add in our number through retail, the Google Sheet ID, etc. But essentially, all the hard work has been done for us in terms of building out everything. Okay. So now let's have a look. Okay. Again, I've just created a sheet, but I'll show you how to add that in later. So if we come out to our end-to-end workflows, we'll be able to see some new workflows created with numbers for us, nice and organized. So let's have a look at the outbound call trigger for now. So you can see it's got that beautiful lead form right here. So our lead form, okay. It's got our form title, form description. And then what's really key here is that the custom field names need to be the same. So when they do go into the dynamic variable inside retail, inside the prompt, the agent can correctly reference them. So we've got the customer name, right? Giving an example, email, phone number, okay, property type, and those things right here. So we're actually going to submit this and then the agent will call us. Again, it's got that lead form again. This can really be anything, right? If you've got Go High Level, you could even give it the Go High Level API. Just give it the necessary APIs, just give it the necessary credentials, and it will create all the forms. It will figure out everything for you. So whatever platform you're doing it on, whether it's Facebook ads, as long as it has an API and as long as you give it enough context, Claude, as I said before, it can create anything. Okay, that's the really key point here. As long as it has an API, it will be able to do it. Okay, using code, of course. Okay, then we've got our HTTPS node. So we can see everything is beautifully structured, right? We're going to have to create our auth header. So we come back to Claude. You can see it's giving us everything. So let's just go in and paste it in. We will need it to be a bearer. So it's going to be name. And the value is just going to be our key right here. Not sure why I couldn't add this in, but that's fine. Checking over the workflow anyway. You can see that is all good to go. Okay. And we can see it's designed our JSON to send out everything. So it has our number. We've just got to replace the number in there. We can see Claude has told us just to replace the number. It's super clear, super concise. It tells us everything it needs to know because it obviously clearly understands N8N. So that is all good. So we're going to replace that number as well. If we come out to our agent, come to phone numbers, you see that's my number right there. I'm going to come back to here and put that in. Right? Awesome. Okay. And then the to number is going to be that obviously lead form from the previous node. Again, same with the name, email, phone, property type. Okay. And then we've got some metadata right there. So that's going to be our outbound call done. We can go ahead and publish that. Okay. Click got it. that's going to be our first workflow done. Literally, as you can see, we just had to connect everything up. Okay. And then it's got our second one, going to be check availability workflow. So very similar to the workflow that we designed previously. Again, just checking slots in a Google Calendar, right? And also what we're going to do is we're going to add in our OpenAI API key. So again, as I said before, very easy. We can create a new secret key, and we'll just name this Claude Code key. And guys, as I said before, if you want, you can obviously copy these values and just give it to Claude Code and it'll create everything. Okay. It's probably the easiest way to do it. So if you create a new credential and it'll put in our API key there. Awesome. Okay. All right. So we've got our API key. Okay. And again, we've got our model, check slots, right? We've got our calendar already set because that's what we did. And we'll just do it from list for now. Okay. That's a lot easier. And everything's done, right? So that's going to be our other workflow. Let's come in and publish that. So our agent creates some calls to it. Oh, okay, so it actually has used conflicting URLs. So what we can do is, so let's just come out. I'm just going to delete. Let's just delete this for now. You can just delete this workflow. That's just because previously with our other agent, yeah, shouldn't give out error now. Check availability. Okay, awesome. So that's all done again. And then we have our book appointment one. Same thing, just using 40 mini. Agents all good. It's got our date, time with our values there. Okay. Google Calendar. Okay. Okay, wow. So I'm not sure what it's done there. That's going to be the attendees. It might have glitched out at the moment. I'm not sure what that's doing. Yeah, it looks like it's tried to add the JSON. That's okay. This is very okay. We'll just do this defaultly, right? We can just add in this for now. That's probably the only thing, but we'll just put in the attendee email right there, which is just going to be the expression. Okay, and then the description, it's even got the description, right? Everything looks really, really good. And then the summary, which is going to be the title, okay? And we'll just switch this from list to our thing. So you can see there's not a lot of manual work. Like we just really need to give the credentials, okay? And as I said before, if you want this to be smoother, you can give the credentials to Claude, but in this course, I'm just running you through step by step because it's very important just to understand what Claude creates as well. So I think we're going to have the same issue with this workflow because we have another workflow, which is going to be the book, this one, okay? We'll just archive this. That was just from the previous one. So if we just publish this now, it's going to be all good. And then we'll double check that those webhooks are also inside retail, which I'm sure they would be. Okay, and then we have our post-call analysis. So we can see this is very, very simple. We're just getting our webhook from our post-call analysis after the call has finished. And if we come into here, we've got to create our credential and we're just going to sign in with Google. Awesome. That's all signed in. Okay. And then we'll do it by list. And we'll just do retail sheet. And then we'll get to sheet one. Going to fetch the columns. Okay. No columns found. So that's why we're going to come back to our Google Sheet and we'll just do name, email, phone, type, which is going to be the type of property, and then do appointments outcome. Okay. Pretty easy. And we'll just switch it back to here. Bang. Okay, awesome. So now what we can do is we can just obviously map in all these variables. We'll do it after we have it after the agent's built. But yeah, that's essentially it. So we can go ahead and publish it. As you can see, it's built out everything. It's just a few manual changes that we needed to do. So now if we come back to our overview, and yeah, that's going to be all our 4 workflows done for the outbound agent. So now if we come back to here, if we come into Alex, the outbound real estate agent, we can now see inside the functions, okay, it's going to have our workflows and appointments in there. Book appointment, awesome. And it's also should have our webhook in there, which is really cool, automatic. Okay. So yeah, that's going to be our webhook inside there, with our post call extraction data. So we can see the summary, call successful, user sentiment, all of these different types of things. Okay. So sweet. So we've got that all set up. And then one last thing that we'll also have to do is just assign phone numbers to our outbound agent, which is going to be this. And yeah, that's going to be our agent all built out. So now, obviously, we can test this agent ourselves if you want to do it ourselves, because again, we're going to have to submit the form. But we could get N8N to submit the form and do everything. But you can see how that's able to literally, essentially build out everything. All we need to do is we just need to map in the we just need to map in the specific things for the post call analysis with all the variables, okay? And then we just need to verify that everything works. But you can see that has essentially all been created, and that's how you can essentially create an outbound AI agent using our Claude Code right here. Okay, awesome. So now that you've understand how to build an inbound agent, okay, and then also an outbound agent, now we're going to be going into another use case, which is giving Claude a list of leads, and then Claude is able to create a voice AI agent, okay, and then it's also able to initiate outbound calls as well, okay, to those leads. So we can do that through retail, right? So I'm going to say to Claude, for example, let's say it's like a solar company. We can say, hey, Claude, I want you to build a AI agent for a solar company that's going to call a list of leads and ask them some qualifying questions. And then from there, Claude can go ahead and build that agent. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give it a file inside here using our files and folders, okay? And attach that file. And then what it's going to do, it's going to create a lead list, essentially. Just go ahead and pull all those lead lists using the batch call function inside retail. So this is going to be a pretty simple, short, quick build, and then we'll move on to kind of more of the advanced stuff, which is connecting it to CRMs, connecting it to different calendar systems, etc., and how we can actually do that. So let's go ahead and prompt Claude, just like I did before. Again, you guys will be getting the hang of this now, okay? Hey, Claude, I want you to create a lead list AI agent for a solar company located in Australia, Brisbane, okay? And what you'll be doing is you'll be calling these leads, right, via a lead list, and you'll just say, hey, you guys reached out a few months ago. I was wondering if you're still interested in solar. If they are, just keep going at it and ask qualifying questions. And then if they do qualify, simply just say, okay, awesome. One of our team members will get back to you. Okay. That's all you need to do. Just go ahead and create everything inside retail using my retail API key. And then from there, I will give you the lead list and you can create the batch call from there. Okay. So we'll go ahead and send that off right here. And we'll just do bypass permissions. Okay. So again, pretty simple. You guys will be getting the hang of this now. We can just go ahead and prompt it through, our conversational message from here. Yep, so we can see it's already got our retail API in reference, as that's what I was talking about before. Okay, so it's going to need our API key, which is, it's going to need our API key again. So again, let's go ahead and copy. We'll just copy any of this. Okay. Okay, that's going to be our API key. And it's going to build out everything. Okay, so we can see updated tools, create LLM, create the retail agent, and then list phone numbers to confirm available from number, right? Then also one more thing that we'll probably have to configure, or we can probably ask the agent, is just to update the phone number for the new agent, right? So it's just ticking away right now. Again, this is going to be a pretty quick build, a pretty quick use case. But now we've understood pretty much all types of agents, a lead list agent, our inbound agent, and then also our outbound agent as well. And then finally, next, we're going to be diving into a multi-prompt agent using calendar systems, adding it to CRMs, etc. Okay, awesome. So LLM created successfully. Now it's going to create the agent. Okay, awesome. So we can see that the output is done from the agent. So it has successfully created our agent based on our prompt with the LLM ID, the retail agent, the name, the phone number that it has been assigned to, and some of the things as well. So just want to come back to our retail agent. If we come, we can see follow lead list Brisbane. And we'll just have a look at the prompt because, again, it's pretty much the same as our outbound agent, but we're just using the API through retail to create a batch call essentially, and it's going to be automatic. Okay, so we can see we've got the role. You're a friendly professional solar energy consultant calling on behalf of a solar company in Brisbane. You're making an outbound call to a lead who previously expressed in solar energy. So the whole use case for this agent is businesses, when you are working them with them or when you just start working with them, they might have a bunch of old leads or they might have a bunch of old contacted leads. And what we can do is we can run a batch call inside retail. We can run thousands of calls at once using AI to essentially reactivate them, right? And book appointments or do whatever drives the revenue for the business. Okay. And that's the whole point of this use case. And we don't need to set up any of this. We can do it through Claude Code through that API section to create a batch call. Okay. So again, pretty self-explanatory with the prompt. I'll quickly run you through it. So it's like step one, greet the lead and explain why you were calling. Say, hey customer, how you were going? If they are interested, explain who you are and why you were calling. You inquired about solar energy a few months ago. I'm just seeing if that's something that you're still looking into. If they say they're not interested, politely thank them and just say no worries at all. Okay. Step two, if they are interested, ask them qualifying questions. Step three, wrap it off and hand it off and then say someone will call you. Again, this is where you can integrate appointment booking, you can integrate transfers, you can integrate notifying SMSs, depending on how the business, generates revenue, whether that's through booking in appointments or whatever. Um, this can be where you can customize that. But again, just for the sake of this demo and sake of this build, just to show you how to do this automatically, which is what I'll show you soon, you can just customize this, okay? Then we've got Pacifics, again, following our prompt format that we have inside the retail. We've got the context, and then we've got the example conversation as well. So again, just simulating an example conversation through an outbound call. So that's pretty much it, right? And then it's also added in a post call webhook, I believe. Not yet, right? It needs to add it in, right? Because we can come down here. So it's also got the post call webhook, but we can see it's got all of the post call extractions. We won't really be using this, right? You've already kind of seen how we've implemented that, etc. So again, we won't really be using all of that, but you can see it's able to add all of that in. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we can see right here, I've already just tested this beforehand, right? But what we can do now is simply just go ahead and paste in all of your leads into Claude, okay? And do, hey, send off the leads. That's all you need to do. Okay, so now I'm going to paste in some example leads that I have right here. Again, you just need to paste them in. You don't need any format right here. And we'll just say, hey, Claude, please use the retail create a batch call API for this agent to create outbound calls for these leads. Okay. And then all we have to do is go ahead and send it off. And you can see Claude is going to essentially do everything automatically on our behalf through the API. So again, these are all just made up leads, by the way, with made up phone numbers. So we can see I must have pasted that in wrong or it hasn't got it. So we can see Claude is really able to learn and format our responses, right? So we can see depending on our responses or, input that we have in, Claude is able to look at that, look at the APIs, look at everything, right? And as you can see, it's working out what the valid numbers are, doing everything on our behalf. So it's able to look at any mistakes we've made. It's able to look at any mistakes Claude has made, and also create batch calls as well. So we can see it's using the API at the moment automatically to these numbers, okay? And it's now sending, right? We can see the leads are skipped. And yeah, that's pretty much how you can create batch calls. How quick and efficient is that, right? Don't even need to understand retail. All you need is the API key, and that's pretty much it. Of course, if you do want to build out workflows, if you do want to build out scheduling, anything off the back of that, you can, right? As long as you've watched the previous builds, just ask it to add in an NNN workflow. We go ahead and check retail, come out to our batch call. we can see that it is calling the leads as we go. So if we come into it, we can see it's added our phone number, it's added the agent in automatically, it's added the CSV automatically. And this has all happened automatically. Like we literally don't need to do any of this, right? And we can see that. So I'm just going to stop it for now because I don't want it to be running out. But you can see that's how you can automatically create lead lists inside Claude Code. So that's another great use case for using Claude Code. So now you should have a pretty good idea on how to create your first agent, how to create a simple inbound agent, how to create an outbound agent, and then lead lists as well. So now we're going to be going over one more use case, which is creating an advanced agent, which is going to be in our next tutorial, which is going to cover multi-scheduling, connecting to different APIs, adding lead information via CRM, all by Claude Code. And that should give you a wide range of builds and a good idea of how to actually build everything in Claude Code. Okay, so now we are going to build the last agent, and this is going to be kind of covering everything in terms of building an inbound agent that can cancel, reschedule, book appointments, and also at the end we'll be adding a post call analysis, which is kind of what I did for the outbound agent. But it will be adding it to a CRM. So again, I'm trying to cover as much use case as possible, but depending on the voice agent you're doing, it's going to vary. But point being is all you need to do is describe it in Claude and it will be done. Okay. So this next agent, I'm going to be using Cal.com's API, but for any business or any software, as long as I have an API, as I said before, it's going to be possible. Claude's going to work it out. It's going to read up the documentation, and it's going to do everything. So I'm going to be taking you through, we're going to be building 5 workflows this time: a check availability, book appointment, a cancel appointment, and then also a reschedule as well. But it's going to be going through cal.com, okay, which is essentially a calendar system. And it's as close as we can get to essentially replicating a business's system through the HTTPS node or the API request node inside N8N. So again, it's going to be relatively the same depending on the agent you're building, okay? So in Claude, I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to describe the agent I want. It's going to create it. Then we'll create all the workflows. Hey, Claude, I want you to create a inbound AI agent for Cool Air HVAC company located in Brisbane, Australia. I want the agent to check availability. I want it to book appointments. I want it to cancel appointments. And I also want it to reschedule appointments as well. Okay. Ensure for this agent, when you are sending the parameters for checking the availability, ensure that the preferred date is in a conversational format. For example, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Okay. And that will be the same for when you are sending the date for booking an appointment, and when you are sending the date for canceling an appointment, and when you are sending the date for rescheduling an appointment. Also, when you are canceling and rescheduling, ensure that you have the email, because you're going to be using the email to look up the appointments as well inside the calendar, okay? And yeah, that's also going to be the agent that we need. And then also within the tools as well, we're going to have 2 transfers. We're going to have transfer to the billing team, the emergency billing team, and then transfer if there's any emergencies. So again, 2 transfers, and then we're going to have 4 different appointment booking processes. And then on top of that, also add in a knowledge base to the agent. You can just make up any information about Cool Air HVAC services and make sure to add a knowledge base inside Retail AI. Okay, thank you. And then we'll just put ensure you use the Retail API to create this agent. So again, this is just going to be an example of creating an agent that can cancel, reschedule, book appointments, have a knowledge base, and then also transfer as well, all in one prompt. Now, we're probably going to need to spend a little bit more time building this agent because depending on how Claude, again, I've tried to give it as much context as possible, but depending on how Claude is going to design the tools, because we're using cal.com, it's going to need the email, it's going to need very specific API structure. So I'm going to be giving it cal.com's API within the next section to build out all the workflows. But for now, this should be all good. Again, we can always go back. Claude can always realize the mistakes and update everything as well. So I'm going to put this on plan mode, of course, and we are going to send it off as the final agent that we're going to be building. Okay. So again, this is able to cover all the use cases, transferring, booking in appointments, canceling, rescheduling, doing all that type of stuff. Okay. Awesome. So we can see, I'll explore the code base and research Retail API to plan this properly. Let me launch a few parallel investigations. Okay. Awesome. So we can see how to create and attach a knowledge base. So we can see it's planning out everything. It's researching all the API endpoints. Okay. So again, depending obviously with our prompt structure, it's going through, it's planning out the API points, then going to create the agent. So it's doing it very methodically, just how we planned it inside the MD files. Okay. So as we can see, also doing some web searches as well. So now we're adding in two new tools right here, which is also going to be a transfer as well. Okay, so it's going to be transferring um, tools to different numbers also. So this is going to be our final agent just to wrap up really everything. Okay, so we can see just going through the webhooks. And if it does encounter any errors, you can see right here, errors have been encountered. It's going to work its way around it, as we said before. But let's just let it do its thing. Of course, if there's any errors previously with our agent, because this is quite a big agent to create. This is quite a big task to create for Claude. Um, it's going to take some time, and there may be a few mistakes. Okay, awesome. Again, we probably don't need that prompt right here, but it now has a comprehensive understanding of the code base and the patterns from Retail AI. Because it is using a lot. It's using its tools, it's using the LLM, it needs to create the LLM, it needs to add the knowledge base, it needs to design the knowledge base. This is doing everything all automatically through here. So the possibilities are limitless, as I said before. So let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so it's designed the prompt. Awesome. Okay, gone through everything. So we can see if we open this up right here. You can see all the different tools. We can see it's designing the transfers, designing the knowledge base. Awesome. Um, yeah. Okay. Awesome. So we can see it's going along pretty well. It'll probably take a few minutes. Right here. And then from there, after, we're really going to dive deep into creating the workflow specifically for this agent, interacting within cal.com. Okay. Um, and I'll show you what variables we need for the connections. Okay. Um, Awesome. So you can see it's coming through nicely. This one may take a little while just because of the workflows that it has and the tools and everything. So I'll probably come back to you actually because it's going to take a little while, maybe a few more minutes. So I'll come back to you as soon as the agent has created all of this. Okay. So we can have a look at everything and then we'll go ahead and add in the agent, we'll add in the post calls, we'll add in all the tools after that. So okay, awesome. So we can see that the plan has been essentially all done out. So we can see it's going to ask for our voice placeholders. So you can see it's just going to set some placeholders. Again, these are just going to be fake numbers, right? But you can see how the agent's going to ask us for some numbers. We're going to submit out everything. And again, we're still in plan mode just so you can see how it's able to plan out everything at the moment. So still to plan right now. So there's going to be quite a big agent. So we can see the user wants to create an inbound agent for Cool Air in Brisbane, Australia via the retail API. This agent handles appointment management, call transfers, and service questions via a knowledge base. The user requirements is all dates past must be in conversational format. That's very important for how we're going to handle the cal.com API because I'm going to tell it how to go in and use AI and transfer that. Okay. The email required for canceling rescheduling, right? Email also used to collect bookings, two transfer tools, knowledge base. So it understands our intent perfectly, right? Deliverables, agent assigned document, okay? Retail knowledge base, LLM, okay? And then with the prompt, 7 tools, and then the knowledge base attached as well. 4 N8M workflows, awesome, okay. So we can see it understands pretty much everything. It's got the knowledge base, okay? We can see we can add into this knowledge base if you want. Create the LLM ID for retail. And we've got the model, the prompt, knowledge base, general tools. Everything is looking pretty good. And then also got our values for all the agent settings as well that it's going to create. So you can see all the workflows all done. 60-minute slots. Reschedule appointment, LLM tools. Okay, awesome. All right, awesome. So we're going to go ahead and auto accept that. And now it is going to build our agent out. So you can see by using the plan mode, which is obviously I've mentioned this before, is what I recommend when creating these large agents, is you can just run over and check everything. It's going to be right 90% of the time, but yeah. So we can just go ahead and right, we can see the updated to do. So now it's going to plan out all the to-dos list. Again, I like using this plan mode just to really see what it's doing step by step and just show you guys. So it's creating the agent, okay? Creating retail LLM knowledge base, prompt and tools. Create the retail agent using the voice configuration, building all 4 workflows, updating the LLM tools URLs with the actual webhook, right? Again, we'll get it to that later after I've described how to do the end-to-end workflow. Then write the final design document and verify, okay? So I will probably go ahead and come back once we have the agent designed and the prompt, and we'll look over everything to make sure it's good. And then we will design all 4 workflows, and we'll use cal.com. We'll give it its API keys. We'll give it everything, okay? And then we'll also, at the end, going to give it a post webhook URL, okay? And then we'll go ahead and test everything using the voice function as well, right? So, okay, updated tools. Okay, so yeah, again, I'll come back when the agent has finished everything. Okay, sweet. So it's been a few minutes, and we can see the agent has successfully created a lot of things all automatically. So, of course, if you come back up to here, my Claude did run out of usage, so you can buy extra uses, or you can be either on the Pro or Max plan. But I don't think you'll rarely hit the usage limit because I've been designing, a lot of agents inside here, obviously. So just bought some extra usages. And then I also told it to not create the NNM workflows. For some reason, it also wanted to build the NNM workflows at the same time. So I just told it not to do that. Again, you can interrupt it. And it went ahead and created everything. Okay. So it's got our prompt in here, just save for reference. And then you can see all the deployment features. So it's got the agent LLM ID, the agent ID, the knowledge base as well, which is a new thing that's created. It's also got the transferring tools as well, the end call tool, and then it's got all of our tools as well. So the only thing left to consider is building out all of the workflows inside NNN. Okay, so if we click in, we can now see the role and task. I'll just quickly run you through it. Obviously, this is a little bit more of a different agent. You can check availability, book an appointment. So we've got the role up the top. Again, pretty self-explanatory. We've got the current time. Where the task changes is obviously where the agent is saying, hello, how can I help you today? And it's going to identify if it is a check appointment availability, book a new appointment, cancel an appointment, reschedule, speak to a billing team, report as an emergency, or ask any general questions, okay? So based on their thing, if the caller wants to check an availability, it's going to do this. And very important, we're going to use a conversational time format. That's what works best for cal.com's API. But depending on your system for the business, this is going to change, of course, okay? And then while waiting, let me say something like this. Let me just check what we have available for you. Present the available slots in a clear conversational way, okay? If no slots are available, suggest alternative dates and offer to check those as well. If the caller wants to book an appointment, collect the following: preferred date and time, full name, full email, service type, okay? And that's it, right? And then from here, we have cancel appointment. So again, ask for that email address used to look up and cancel the appointment. Call the cancel appointment tool. Again, very important we're referencing these tools correctly. With our, little apostrophes at the top. And then from there, we have our reschedule one. So again, ask for their email address. This is going to, ask for their email address and ask for their current appointment date and time, and ask for their new preferred date and time as well. Then call the rescheduled appointment with the preferred date and time, current appointment, in the conversational format, and then the new date and time as well, and the email as well. Okay. While we're letting say no worries, let me sort that out for you. Confirm the new appointment once it is successful. And then we have some very similar scenarios if it wants to speak to billing. So you can see right here, it's using our markdown format right here, which is really good. And now we have all these different scenarios for checking availability, booking an appointment, and also answering any general questions. Okay. Got our specifics, context of the business, example conversation, tools right here. Awesome. We've got all of our tools, and then notes as well. So again, Very, very good prompt. Now, if we come to the functions, we can see we've got check availability, book appointment, cancel appointment, reschedule appointment, transfer to billing, right, which is just our number that it has inside here. Transfer to emergency as well inside here. And then we also have end call also. Okay. So that's all of our functions that we have in here, which is very, very beautiful, but we'll add in all the webhooks as well, because, the agent might not get it right first time. And then right here, we have our knowledge base, which has been added in, which is really cool. So this has been created automatically. So if we come to our knowledge base, come to the cool HVAC knowledge base. Okay, we can design it. And as you can see, this is a text file that it's put in. This is all generated by AI, obviously, and this is all happening automatically. So we can see each time someone asks a question, it's going to refer to this knowledge base right here, right? So that's essentially all of our configurations when creating the agent. So now that we've done that, we can move on to then creating all the N8N workflows. And as I said before, we're going to be using cal.com. So there's going to be a few things that we need to do inside cal.com and a few things that we need to give for Claude Code, N8N, and cal.com to interact with each other as well. And then finally, we'll also build out a webhook setting as well for one of the things. I think we'll do that after we design all the prompts, just so we can really hone it in. Okay, awesome. So I'm in cal.com right here, and we're going to need a few things just to put into Claude while we're here. So I'm going to create a new event, and this is going to be a HVAC service appointment. Duration will be 60 minutes. And we can just click continue right there. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to get this little ID, a little number right here. Copy that. We're going to come back to Claude and we're going to do event type ID. And then cal.com API key. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we want to go to settings. We want to come to API key. I'm going to click add and we'll just do this Claude code key. Set on, click save. Copy that, come back, and we'll put that in right there. Okay. So we've got our cal API key and then our cal event type ID. Now what we're going to do is let's just copy that for now and save that in our clipboard. And now I'm going to describe everything that we need for our prompt for N8N. So I'm just going to describe every workflow that I want, check availability, book appointment, cancel. And then I'm also going to give it the API documentation from cal.com so it can look that up and then use that in combination with my request and then use all of my API keys and then go through the process of adding in the webhooks and updating everything. Okay, so let's go. Hey, Claude, I now want you to build 4 workflows: check availability, book appointment, cancel appointment, reschedule appointment. But it's going to be inside cal.com. I will attach the API reference. First, what I want you to do is I want you to research the entire necessary API documentation so you can understand how it works. And then from there, you can use the data that you have gotten by retail. You can then, obviously, once you've researched cal.com, research everything. And then once you have got that, make sure you put in the correct formats that the API needs, the correct authorizations, everything, and then create 4 workflows that can check availability, book appointment, cancel appointment, and reschedule appointment all inside cal.com. Okay, so I need you to figure out how to build those workflows. They must work. I will provide all my API keys and I will provide all my credentials as well. So we're going to challenge Claude a little bit here. I haven't really told it how to build the workflows, but I've told it that it'll need to attach the references. Okay. So we're going to put in our information down here. And we'll say you must research this, please, before creating any workflows. Then we'll say, then once you have successfully created everything, please get the webhook and put it in the tools. I'm going to come down to the API documentation right here. And then we're just going to paste it in here. Okay. Come back to Claude and bang, paste that in. And then we're going to click send. Okay, so now what this should do is it should look at the reference, it should understand the structure it needs, and then it's also going to figure out, hopefully, in N8N how to build those workflows to accommodate for that structure and make the connection in between retail, N8N, and Cal.com. So we're really going to push Claude's limits here. Of course, we can assist it if we want on how to build the workflows. I have a good general idea on how to build these workflows for Cal.com specifically. But we can see that Claude should do a pretty good job of building these workflows. It's going to look at the API documentation thoroughly, build all of the workflows, update the LLM tool URLs with the real webhook URLs as well. And then we'll just go in there, check everything, publish it, and then finally we'll do a real test using retail AI as well. So again, I'm going to let it do its thing. It's going to probably go for another few minutes. Again, these are fairly large workflows that it has to build, but we're going to really test Claude Code here to build these advanced workflows. But yeah, previously on my channel, we had to build out these workflows manually. Although it's very good to understand how these things work, I still think you guys should absolutely understand the technology and the core technology itself. Because obviously, if something goes wrong and the AI can't fix it, you're stuffed, right? You have no idea what to do. So again, as I said before, kind of at the start of this course, it's very important to just to understand what Claude is doing, right? Whether that's sitting down here and looking at all the HTTP requests it's doing, all the bash commands it's doing, how it's actually creating everything, or whether that's going in and learning it and yourself. Okay, but again, have some good general understanding on what it's doing because you're always going to need to describe your workflow to Claude in the best possible way. Okay, because if you don't understand any, then you're not going to understand how to describe exactly what you want. Okay. So we can see it has all the cal.com API details. Again, it's just coming through right here. Probably best to use the plan mode here, but I'm just going to let it go really. And if it does run into any errors or if I see it, we can always go back and test it as well. Okay. You can see building all four workflows, uses webhook AI agent, phrases the conversational date. Awesome. And then http cal.com and then respond to the webhook. Okay. Now, hopefully, what it's going to get right is with the cancel appointment, it's going to need multiple HTTP requests. Probably should have told it that, but we can always go back and edit it once it has done everything. But it's for the check availability book appointment, it's fine. But for canceling and rescheduling, it needs to search for the appointment. And then once it's found the appointment, it then needs to book the appointment again, right? And then with the reschedule, I believe there's 3 requests. It's going to need to search if it is available. That's going to need to search the available time slot. And then it's going to need to also search and then it's going to need to reschedule it. So I've got a feeling that it won't quite do that, but again, probably should have said that before. But we can always come back in Claude, and we can tell it to update it. Right? We can tell it exactly what to do inside N8N, and it's going to do it because it has context. It has an idea of how to build these workflows inside the node. So we can see it's built it again. We'll have a look at it as well. We'll probably most likely have to make some changes here. And then we'll get Claude to actually test it as well from retail. Awesome. So again, it's just trickling through. And I'll probably come back to you once it's done. Okay, so we can see after a few minutes, we can see that all four cal.com workflows are deployed. So let's get into it. Let's have a look at everything. Let's come over to our N8N workflows and we'll click refresh. And also just want to check quickly if, yeah, okay. Just wanted to check that those URLs are not the same as the previous workflows we'll build in the course. Otherwise that won't work. Okay. So let's have a look and let's check everything. Okay. So again, as you can see, pretty good output in here. Come into the webhook. Everything seems good. We've got the post URL, got the path. Okay. Come into our OpenAI account. Again, just make sure to connect your credits. Okay. Get our agent right here. Okay. So this most likely will need to be expression. Let's see what it's done in here. So you're a date phrasing and scheduling assistant for Cool Air HVAC in Brisbane. We've got the time zone right here. The current UTT time zone is this right now, which seems correct. I believe, yes. A caller has requested to check appointment availability. Their preferred date in conversational format is this. Awesome. So again, highlighting that structure inside 8N is the exact same in retail, which is important. Phrase this task. So phrase this conversational date into an actual date. Okay. So what's really important here is that Claude has understood that it needs to be in a UTC format. Okay, which is really important. And the most reliable way is just to get that conversational time that they've said. Use the time now and convert it into a UTC format. Okay. So we've said your task is to phrase this conversational date, determine the start date, okay? If no Pacific time was mentioned, use the start of the business hours. Use the end date to determine the end date. Use the end date of the same day, okay? In the same day, and then only return the valid JSON objects, okay? So again, I'm not going to touch it. If it does return an error, we'll see that Claude can fix it, okay? And then right here, it's added in a phrasing JSON, which is interesting, okay? And then from here, we have our HTTP node right here, okay? So with our authorization, you can see most likely that is our cal.com API key, and it has correctly filled out everything. It's got the name, event type ID, the start, the end, and then the time zone as well, with all of the values as well, which is really awesome, okay? Formatting the response and then returning it to the webhook. So what we're going to do is we're going to publish this. Everything seems pretty good, right? But we'll see how it handles the two more advanced workflows, which is the rescheduling and canceling, right? But for now, let's look at the book appointment one. Again, this one should be pretty simple as well. So again, we'll get our webhook. It seems pretty good. All right, and then we have our model. Awesome. AI agent right here. So you're a date phrasing assistant. So yeah, it's going to do the same thing. Let's make sure we switch it to expression, okay? All the details in here. It's got the current time, okay? And then it's just going to phrase that start date. Yep, okay. Seems pretty good. Again, we're not gonna touch it. We're gonna put in some test data, and we're gonna use Claude to do that, of course. Right. Okay. Then we've got bookcal.com. Yeah. So everything looks really good, guys, inside here, just based on what I'm looking at because I built these workflows before. So it looks pretty good. Okay. And then we've got our response as well, which is just formatting the response. Awesome. So yeah, this is really good. Let's go ahead and publish this as well. But we will only know until we test everything. Okay. But again, depending on the business's systems, right, you can literally just go to Claude, give, let's, for example, say they're using Service Titan is a common one with HVAC or, Simpro. I was working with a company that uses Simpro. But yeah, you can give them the API documentation and just let Claude research everything. Let Claude look at the N8N documents, look at the API documents, look at everything, and it will decide and actually figure out itself on how to build these workflows, But obviously, the more you prompt, the more context you give it, the better the output, right? Okay, so now let's look at the cancel one, because this is going to be interesting. And look, it looks pretty good. This is pretty amazing. So we can see, obviously, webhook is fine. And now it's going to find the booking via the email, which is, I to be honest, I didn't know if it was going to do this, right? But we can see it obviously knows using the attendee email, right? It's got everything correct. Coming to our AI agent right here. Okay, let's make sure we switch this to expression. Caller wants to cancel their appointment. They said the appointment date is this. Okay, here are the upcoming bookings found for their email. So it's actually gone ahead and used. Okay, that's interesting. So let's put in the email through here. Phrase the caller's conversational date. Find the booking from the list that matches. Okay. So yeah, that's really good. So it's actually accounted. Let's say they have multiple bookings under that email. The agent's going to know that because they put in that data in here, which is really cool. That is designed, right? Yeah, you can really push the limits here, okay? Then we have a phrased output, okay? And this is really good, which is what I was hoping it to do, to use an if statement. So essentially, if that UID exists, which is awesome, we can then cancel it on cal.com, right? With the necessary functions, okay? We've got everything out right here. We can then go ahead and use the JSON mode, right? So if it is found, it's then going to cancel it, right? And then it'll respond to a success message, right? Okay. And then if it returns an error, okay, it's then going to respond using an error. Okay, this workflow looks really good, but again, we will test it. We will test it. And then we have the final one, which I believe is the, okay, yeah, we're just going to fix up this. We can go ahead and publish it. So yeah, this is all done automatically. Like within a few minutes, it created these workflows. This would normally take hours, right? I did build a dentist agent that I did it completely from scratch, and it took around 2 hours. So as you can see, it's quite crazy. So let's go into the reschedule one. And we can see right here, find booking by email. Pretty good. Got all the same things, right? It's got our webhook. Can set this up, right? Our agent looks pretty good. It's going to do the same UTC conversion. We'll see how that works out when we do test it. Okay. Phrasing the output, then we've got an if statement. Okay. If it is found, we'll go ahead and cancel it, right? With the new time. Okay. And then, yeah, okay. Looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and publish it, and we're going to test everything. One last thing I want to double check is going to be all of these functions. Seems pretty good. They've even got the JSON notes in there as well. Like, this is amazing. Come in, book an appointment. Okay. Look, everything looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into retail, and let's just give it a test, okay? So let's just ask if it can book the appointment. So I'll just say, hi, do you have slots, please, for tomorrow at 3 p.m.? Okay. So we're just going to test all of these workflows to see if it'll actually work, okay? So you can see it's literally working, which is really, really good, okay? So again, you can even get Claude to do this. I've done this before, but I'm just going to do it manually for now. You can get Claude to do this and test it, right? I've got a dedicated testing section, which I'll run in over on how we can utilize Claude Code to do these tests. But we've got a dedicated check availability, right? So we've got these dedicated, tools that we can go ahead and check, and we can actually give Claude to check the tools. If it's not working, Claude can see, okay, what is wrong with our agent? Where's the error? What is happening? And how can we fix it? Okay, so this is like huge for voice agents specifically. Okay, so if we come into back here, we should get a green within our executions. Awesome, like literally no errors from what I can see. Okay, webhook has executed. I mean, yeah, this is amazing. So we've got all of our preferred date and time, which is phrased correctly. Agent has all of our outputs, start and end date. It's phrased everything correctly. It's built out all of our query parameters inside here. Yeah, this looks pretty flawless, to be honest. So yeah, this is working, which is really great. Okay, and then if you'd like to book the appointment, we'll say we've got an available slot tomorrow at 3 p.m. We'll say, does this time work better for you? Yes, I would like to book this slot. My name is Ashton Voss. My email is ashtonvoss47@gmail.com. And I'm just after a HVAC installation. Okay. So we can send that off now, and we'll test if the book appointment workflow works, which I assume it would. No errors so far. Okay. See if we get some data in here. Awesome. And it succeeded, right? And I just got the notification on my phone right here, which I can just show you guys so we can see. Notification has came through. And just like that, we haven't had to touch any of these workflows and anything. So you guys can really experiment this with any agents you're building for any systems. Just give it the API documentation so it understands how to create these end-to-end workflows, right? Because again, as I said before, it's got the MCP, it's got the skills, okay? And it just needs more context of Claude, and it's limitless, these chances, these workflows that it can build, okay? So again, just checking the output, super good. I'm really confident in it now, but we can see the output. I've got the success. Everything is looking pretty good. Yeah, so it's all working, obviously. I got the email, okay? So now, let's say, can I please reschedule that appointment, please, to, we'll just do Thursday. I should do Friday at 2 p.m. this week, please. Okay, so we can see it's successfully been rescheduled, right? You can see all done. Your appointment has been rescheduled for you, okay, which is awesome. Okay, now let's say, okay, I'd just like to make a new appointment with the same details, please. Um, and it'll just be for tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you guys can do that. So we'll just put that in there. And then what I want to do is also test the cancel workflow, okay? And that'll be our first agent, once this is all working, built out with Claude Code. And as we can see, it's checked availability and it's booked the appointment. Awesome. And I've just gotten the email as well. So yeah, that's the full agent built. All 4 workflows, all designed with Claude Code. Again, if you're building this system for any other APIs, just put in the API documentation, let Claude Code understand it, and it will build out everything for you. Okay. So that's going to be pretty much everything that we've covered. We've got our knowledge base in here. We've got our transfer tools. We've got our, all 4 book appointment tools. We've got everything done. Okay. You can go even more in depth with the call settings. Again, you guys can customize all of these things in Claude. Just describe what it wants and it will do it. But yeah, that's going to wrap up the last build for everything. I think we've covered pretty much all use cases. Again, just to recap, we've gone through our inbound agent. We've gone through our outbound agent. We've gone through a leadless agent. We've gone through a multi-scheduling agent covering everything. So you guys should have a really good understanding on how to build all these use cases and how the system works. Everything that we've done. Just make sure to always reference the API documentation. Make sure you've installed everything in the start, and you should be good to go to start building literally pretty much any voice agent you want. So now let's get into the next section where I just want to run through how we can actually test these agents and how we can use Claude Code to test these agents as well. And then finally, we'll just move on to deployment, which is just essentially putting in numbers with Claude Code. Okay, so now let's run through actually the testing protocol that I use for my agency. And I'm just going to be talking a little bit about how we can utilize Claude to make this process as efficient as possible. Now, obviously with testing, a little bit different than development because we're mainly using Claude to develop it and all the systems. But I thought I'd include this little section here just so you can understand how to test these agents, because I just want to have a little, obviously, disclaimer in here that development is actually the easy part, right? It's actually testing with voice agents. Testing is the most important thing because without seeing if the agent can work within the business, right, we don't know if it's good or not, right? We don't know if all our development stuff is obviously applicable in the real world. So testing is really, really important to actually make sure our agents produce results for businesses. And part of that testing process is simulating real conversations. And I thought I'd add this in so you can understand the testing process and then also understand how to use Claude Code right here. So I've got this little, chart up or graph, essentially how I do all my testing. So there's 4 main stages. We've got the testing stage up here, and then the launch stage, and then there's a split into internal testing, automated testing, soft launch, and full launch. Now I'm going to be giving you my thoughts on where I think Claude can take place in some of these testings, and also where I think it might not be best to use Claude, right? Let's dive into it. So obviously Claude is very good for developing, right? It's going to cut down our development costs drastically. We don't need to create these agents manually anymore, okay? But the first part of our testing, right, is going to be developer-based testing. So that's essentially where we use this ourselves and test everything in N8N, go high level, retail, everything, right? So simply, that's where we can use Claude, okay? So instead of manually having to put everything, simply, right, we can go into Claude and we can say, hey, look, I want you to do a full system test of everything, right? I want you to test transfer calls. I want you to test the book appointment. I want you to test the check availability, okay? And we'll just do this ourselves with the data that we have, okay? So, for example, I'll show you a quick example right here, right? So with Claude, we can say, hey, Claude, I want you to do a full system test of a conversation, okay? Use the retail AI um, feature to run some tests. I want you to check availability, book appointments, cancel appointments, reschedule appointments as well. And then I also want you to run a test where you just ask any questions about the business, okay? And report the findings back to me, okay? I'm just going to send that off now, okay? So what that's going to do is, again, it's going to use our retail API right here. And it's going to test all the end-to-end workflows itself, and it's going to report back the findings. So again, this is extremely useful. Still kind of part of the development phase, but we're moving into the testing phase now, okay? And Claude can help us with this, okay? So while that's cooking, okay, we can see I'll run a full system test and report back with everything, okay? So while that's running, we can come back to here, okay? So that's essentially phase one, is where we're testing everything ourselves. And then phase two is obviously a part of internal testing, which is the client runs tests. So the client can obviously test the agent. They can talk to it, okay? Can't really use Claude Code for this because obviously the client knows the conversations that's having in the business. They know what's going on with the voice agent. So they can very easily, test the agent on the phone. And we usually like to give them a spreadsheet, and they can just mark down any inefficiencies of the agent, any changes such as the voice, collecting this information, any minor changes or major changes within the agent. And that's really a part of our internal testing phase, right? So once we do that, right, we can use Claude to make those changes. So let's say, for example, okay, the voice, needs to be more expressive, or they don't like the voice, or they don't like how the information's going into this, appointment or CRM, for example. Okay, we can use Claude and we can say, hey, this is the report that the client gave us. Please make these changes within our workflow. Okay, and it will be able to do that because it's developed the system. It has everything. It has all the knowledge that it needs to. Okay, so that's essentially where we can also use Claude as well. So that's very simple. We just give our findings and say, hey, these are some of the changes that need to be made for the agent. Go ahead and fix it. Okay. You guys should have a really good understanding of how that could work, because if you've watched, previous builds, it's really easy. You just type it into Claude what you want and it's going to change everything and update it by the API. Okay. Then our second stage is automated testing. Now, this is where, we can use Claude technically, right? But you could either use Claude or other voice platforms. Essentially, automated testing is using AI to test AI, right? So we can automate testing. All right, we come into here. We could automate testing, right, by creating AI agents to interact with your main AI agents. So usually we like to do this before our soft launch, which I'll explain what that is. But we need to essentially gather data either from the client or gather real world calls to run some automated tests to try and get as close as possible to real simulated conversations, okay? Before we do that, let's see how our agent is doing, okay? So we can see it's testing everything. If we come back, this is just an example of how Claude can do our internal testing for us. We can see it's using everything it's created, the test call right here, okay? Okay, so we can see it's going quite well. Again, I'll report back to the findings once we do that. But essentially, we could use Claude for this process, or we could use a dedicated testing platform. Um, this is an example, Test AI or Reliable, or there's a bunch of different voice testing platforms that allows us to use AI, use the data, the scripts, the calls, and the recordings that we have of real conversations, and get AI to test that. Okay, we could do the same thing for Claude, right? We could simply say, hey, Claude, here's all the data that we have. Can you please run some automated tests against our agent and report back the findings? That can be very easily done. So you can either do that with Claude, just put it in, or you could either do it with a dedicated testing platform. Now, to be honest, I haven't tested this a lot. I've only really used it for development, which is mainly what this course was about. But I'm sure it could do it. But I think using a dedicated platform for now would give you better results because it's a dedicated platform for testing, essentially, right? But I'm sure with enough context, with a good system, you definitely could go run that through Claude. Okay. And then we have our launch phase. Okay. So this is really coming out of testing, right? But I thought I'd still mention this so it makes sense in context, right? So, first of all, we have our soft launch. This is essentially where our voice agent will only handle a certain amount of calls. Okay, so we can launch it after hours so we can validate calls because we don't want to fully launch an agent taking every single call because we still don't know what it's really like in a real environment. We still haven't tested any real calls. We still actually don't know what it's like. So we launch it in a soft launch phase to handle a limited amount of calls and we heavily monitor that production environment to see if they go unanswered, to see what the quality is like, to see if the customer satisfaction is high, any error rates. And this can all very easily be done in retail through something called AI quality assurance right here, or we can see our analytics tab right here. We can select an agent right here, and we can just see essentially how it's going. Okay. So that's essentially what a soft launch is. And depending on the data we collect, if it is positive, we can go into a full launch. If it is negative, we might want to head back to this automated stage until we can get it into a confident soft launch. So with voice agents, we'd like to have a success rate on a call or overall in an agent. So usually 80 to 85% is a really good success rate for the agent successfully handling all of the calls. So that's kind of what we like to aim for. Once it does hit that, it'll go into a full launch, which essentially means it's taking all of the calls. Okay. And we also monitor it during a full launch because it might have a little bit more volume inside the system. So where can you use Claude Code in this? Again, you can use it bouncing in between the automated testing and then also the soft launch as well. You can always collect data from core recordings, quality, accuracy, different metrics. Use Claude and you can also test it. So that's essentially just a quick section on testing agents. I thought I'd just throw this in here so it can make sense for different use cases. But now let's look back and let's check with Claude so we can see everything is done. So this is an example of how you could do some testing through Claude. Okay, so a full system test report. But what's really cool with Claude is not only can it use all of the different APIs to test our agent, but it also can report back findings. So we can see the response time. We can see the result of available slots, right? So again, it's tested the check availability. It's tested the book appointment. So you can see that's failed for some reason. Um, but then you can see another test was done automatically, which is brilliant. We've got response times. We've got any notes, right? So we can see that Claude is able to do all the testing for us and report back findings to us within the same thing, which is really important because usually we would have to test each thing individually, okay? And then obviously go ahead and make the changes, right? But here we can see a nice little report that Claude has done for us. So we've got our book appointment one, we've got our reschedule one, which is a pass. Cancel appointment, we can see the inputs that it's got, the email, right? Super good, right? All the times involved, the statuses, number 5. So you guys could run this every day potentially through Claude and it's able to test your system. So this is a really just easy way for us to monitor and continue to develop and make these systems high quality for clients, okay? So we've got the summary right here. As you can see, the tests, all returning pass, and then the recommendation. The AI agent inside the NNN workflow. The AI agent sometimes interprets the conversational dates incorrectly, off by a day, okay? To improve accuracy, you could add the current date and time to the AI agent, which is perfect. As again, guys, I haven't really touched this. This is all done. And add a date validation. If the phrase day is in the past, reject the caller. So you can see that's a beautiful example. We could simply ask Claude to go ahead and make these changes inside our NNN and retail, test it again, and update it. So this is just a really good example on how we can test these agents using Claude to make this process a little bit easier and more efficient. Okay, now I'm just going to quickly go over deployment and using phone numbers. Now, just to clarify, there could be a way that you could automate SIP trunking through Twilio's API. I'm not sure. You'll have to look up the Twilio documentation for SIP trunking. I don't think there's a way based on what I know of. But in terms of deployment, of course, you can use Retail's API, anything to do with phone numbers, right? You can create a phone call. You can create a phone number inside Twilio's native phone number platform. So if you come to the phone numbers, come through here, buy a new number, okay? And it should buy a new number through the API. So as I said before, anything to do with the API, it can do it all automatically, right? So we can see our phone number options here, which is going to be creating a phone number, getting a phone number, listing phone numbers, updating phone numbers, deleting phone numbers. It can all do this through our agent as well. So yeah, that's essentially just a short thesis on numbers as well. And then of course it can update agents with numbers. So once you have your number in here from Twilio, that essentially is going to be it in terms of deployment. So those are kind of the possibilities around the number. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Again, as long as it has the API inside here and you have your number updated inside retail, it's able to make those changes to different agents. It's able to assign outbound agents. It's able to assign inbound agents. It's able to, do SMSs as well. So as long as you have that number in and as long as it's part of the APIs in retail, then you'll be fine in terms of deployment and numbers. So yeah, that's essentially going to be it for this entire course. So drop a comment down below. Make sure you subscribe and like the video if you do like this longer style content. And also just let me know if you want to see more videos using Claude Code, building real voice agents as well. Without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.